you know, like supernatural, right?
Yeah.
Like you just have this aura that like
Yeah,
you're
yeah, absolutely. And like I said, he was a handsome man. He
yeah.
was
Oh well, yeah. There you go.
he was charismatic, and he loved women. Like there's no doubt
I'm
about
sure
it.
women loved him
Yeah,
too.
yeah, you know, yeah. No, I think, again, I won't talk about my father too much, but
No, I
he
mean
he
it's. I mean, it's this podcast is about you. You can say
yeah,
whatever you
yeah.
want.
No,
This
no.
is probably
We will get into business at some point.
yeah,
I promise you.
exactly.
But
So it's just this is raw. So honestly, like I'm enjoying
yeah,
every minute of this, and I'm sure other people would.
yeah, and like like I said, my father was diagnosed as terminal. He thought it was highly ironic. He'd dodged being shot. He's been stabbed more times. I come in the front room and he's stitching his arm up where he'd been stabbed. You know, he had stab wounds all over.
4, 3, 2, 1. Ben,
Right, nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. How are you?
Good.
Finally.
Finally, we got
It's been
there.
in the works for a while.
It has, mate. It has.
It's very nice to have you, and incredibly honored and humbled that you're with us today.
Thank you.
Heard great things about you. We've known each other for some time, so I'm happy that you finally get the chance to share your amazing story with everyone else.
Yeah, it's certainly been a journey.
Definitely been a journey for sure. I got a lot of questions for you based on that.
Good, good.
Usually I start off by letting people introduce themselves
Right.
because I think there is no one better to describe oneself than
me.
Yeah.
Okay. Ben Burns from London. How would I describe myself? Interesting. Diverse, different, slightly out there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think really. Like, how would you describe myself? Because I'm multiple things.
Yeah.
As I've said to you before, I have high functioning ADHD, which means I can work in different environments,
two of
different
us
things.
now.
Yeah, and so when I say, you know, introduce myself, which personality, I guess, is probably the you know, the
Which one? The calm one or the one that's like hyper or which one or the one in the middle?
There's so many different elements to me, I guess. It's
But
that-
wait, like a question on the side before we get into anything. When did you actually, I never asked you this, when did you get diagnosed with this?
When I
Or
was-
how did you even find out?
Yeah, so when I was young, my mother went a little bit different to other children in terms of I was very boisterous. I was just my communication was pretty strong, but
From a young age?
yeah, but I was almost uncontrollable at times.
Yeah.
And she was like, I need to go and see a doctor to see what this is on. You know, why is my son like this? And they were like, we're talking so long ago now, right? Compared to like mental health and diversity and the mind has come on so much from when I was a child. They were like, yeah, we just think he's a bit boisterous. We just need to give him something to try and structure him a bit better. And they gave me Ritalin at the time, very different to the Ritalin that we see today.
yeah.
And my mother just didn't like it. She felt it turned me into some, like almost not like a zombie, I guess.
Yeah.
Like just my personality was so we stopped. And then we never really even thought about it anymore. Fast forward 34 years later, and I moved to Dubai, where the stimulus of the city is everywhere. Like I said to you earlier, right?
Yes.
It's the city a little bit like never sleeps.
Yes.
So the lights are bright, the buildings are tall, the traffic is chaotic, and the driving. And I felt like I was just beginning to lose a little bit of control of my mood and my actions, and I was just chasing more and more dopamine. But at that time, I didn't realise that was it. So actually, I only got diagnosed when I moved here. Now, throughout my life, I had an idea I was, you know, different because I think my mind works very different.
Yeah.
And you know, deep diving and looking into my own background and looking at maybe actions and the way I've reacted to things in certain situations throughout my childhood led me to the path of, well, actually, why haven't I ever looked to try and get some support on this and to see what could take me from where I am to like the next level? Because I want to level up as a human, right? And certainly as a business person, as a father, as a husband, all those things. And I felt that there was parts of it that made me superhuman in some, like my work ethic and my level of creativity. But on the flip side of that can be ultra aggression in small doses, a huge amount of empathy for people, but actually can lead me to making lots of bad decisions as well.
Right.
And I just felt
Because sometimes you have to disassociate your feelings with
with decision making, right?
yeah, especially in business.
and I was terrible. I led with whatever mood I was in, quite frankly. So, so to come back to your original question, it was more when I moved here.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, honestly, because even me, sometimes I get so fed up with just always being around people and having to talk and this and that I actually decided yesterday, I was like, you know what, I'm going to get away from the city. So I drove like an hour and a half away to Hatta. Yeah. Which is like close to the border of Oman. I don't know if you've been there, but like it's pretty much mountains, nature, greenery, etc. Peaceful, away from the hustle and bustle of Dubai. And I think honestly, like obviously everybody has their own way, but even if you look at all like the best men out there, or like let's say the remarkable men of our times, they all had their own escape, right? They all had their own escape where they used to go and like stay, I don't know, like somewhere for like periods of time alone, meditating, etc., doing whatever it is that needs to be done alone. Yeah. No distractions. Then they come back. Yeah. And to their usual routine. So I mean, for me, because I'm a bit like you, I don't know if our ADHD is similar in terms of intensity, but that works for me. Yeah. And then another thing that I tried doing, and I don't know if that's also something that maybe you apply, is I time everything. So for example, if I'm on a task, I'll give it like a specific based on my evaluation of how long it takes, because that's the only way for me to be able to. Yeah, and I think it's so important. It's funny, it's people with ADHD, right? We crave structure, but we hate it. Yeah. Which is ironic at its best, so isn't it? Well said. That is so accurate. So well said.
It's, you know, we can do everything and we can do nothing. And that's
very binary.
Yeah, so much so that, you know, and also I think we have a social battery. You know, we can walk into a room and we can be like life and the soul, and, you know, most people with it, high function, are very charismatic, right? Yeah. But the moment they walk out or that battery drains, just like, leave me alone. Like, I want to go and sit down in a dark room. Yeah. And even, you know, I said to you before, my wife's friend's here at the moment, and she was like, do you ever stop? She come down this morning, like 8 o'clock, I've got a Starbucks and I'm working. She was like,
I saw that post, you're like highly caffeinated today.
Yeah, exactly, right? And that's, I mean, that's
it wasn't even 12 or 1 p.m.
Yeah, and she was like, are you like this all day, every day? I'm like, yeah. She was like, do you ever stop? I'm like, no, because I don't know how to. Is the honest answer.
And you told me your son now is like that too, right?
Yeah, he is. He is a mini me.
A mini version of
you.
Yeah,
which is good and bad in some respects, right? I am hoping that, you know, his mother is very, she's a very smart, strong, independent woman, and she's very stubborn as well, you know, by her own admission. I think I've had 2 apologies in 10 years, and one I'm not even sure she meant. But he does have those traits. But he, you know, his emotional intelligence is phenomenal. So I see a lot of me on him. But then as part of that, no doubt we'll get into it, but my childhood was uniquely different. And
I was actually going to ask you, because you really, really come a long way from how your childhood was. And I just wanted you to tell me a little bit about like your early upbringing and your early childhood in the UK, because you also lived in a very particular city that you said had a very different way of doing things.
Yeah. I mean, like with every great story, or we have to understand the past. We have to understand where we come from.
Exactly.
And, you know, if I was to look at my parents, it was Romeo and Juliet at its finest. You know, you've got my father was a street kid from Liverpool, from the roughest part of Liverpool, whose father was an alcoholic, gambling degenerate, quite frankly, who finally managed to get a job building houses in the south during the Depression. So the family, you know, moved down, and they lived in a caravan, and they were poor, very, very poor.
That's your grandfather?
Yeah, on my dad's side, right? And then I look at my mum. My granddad on my mum's side was a colonel in the British Army. You know, just so different.
And how did he even accept this marriage?
Well, he didn't. He didn't. No. Okay. And to be fair, I don't blame him, right? I don't. And you know, he's a colonel in the British Army. He went from Aldershot to New Zealand. My mum was actually born in New Zealand.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Hence why I have dual nationality.
Okay.
To be fair, my passport is expired. I do need to do that at some point. And the family was, you know, my mum and her sisters were most of them were all born in New Zealand. And then they did they call it the tour. So they did New Zealand. Then they went New Zealand, Hong Kong, because it was still under British rule at that time. And then when she was in Hong Kong, she realised that she really enjoyed dancing and ballet specifically. And because of my granddad's rank, they also got the ability to send them to private school.
Okay.
And it just so happened that one of the best dance schools at the time was in a place called East Grinstead. It's called Bush Davis. You ever Google it, there's such heritage, and it was like the equivalent to the Russian ballet dance school. That was like the British version. My mum applied and got in. So she went boarding there, just as my father had moved down to East Grinstead with his dad and the family because they found work there. And it was like a perfect storm. My father was, I always call him like beautifully dangerous. Is probably the best way to explain it. And he was, very handsome, charismatic, charm the birds from the trees. My mum was this like sheltered, well brought up, articulate, at a private school. And back then the boys of the local town were trying to get amongst the dancers for obvious reasons. And they sort of met, fell in love. I was I guess part of that. But yeah, my granddad, my mum's side, Gerald, he never quite got to grips with it. Him and my father were very different, from very different backgrounds. And they clashed, but it was what it was. They lived together. They were married for 5.5 years. But it was a very abusive relationship, no doubt about it. My earliest memories of, they lived in a place called Copyhold, Frida Close, and a lot of my friends will no doubt watch this. They'll know exactly what I mean when I say about that. And it was abusive. Like, it was on my father's side predominantly. He was aggressive. He was just not in control of his actions. So my earliest memories were violent, ultra violent temper. But it was almost to a level of blackout aggression where he just didn't know what he was doing. I'm making no excuses for him. And before he passed away many years ago, we had that conversation, right? But he was a troubled man, and we're talking many years ago where mental health we weren't aware of it like we are today. And so they went their own way, which, to be honest, was great for all parties. And my mum went to a place called Bexley Heath on the outskirts of London. Well, actually, it was East London first, and then there. And my father was indifferent in terms of what he was doing for work. As I sort of said before, he originally worked for a group of gypsies, shall we say, who run, underground fighting, underground greyhound racing. Anything is illegal, they were into it. It's probably they lived in a beautiful big mansion in a place called Blindley Heath. They had a racetrack, a bare knuckle boxing ring.
It sounds like your dad would be the perfect character for a movie. What's his name? The famous British director, Guy Ritchie. There you go.
Completely. And actually, one of the nightclubs my father ended up running was in the Guy Ritchie movie called Snatch.
Oh my God.
Which is a place called Caesars, and I'll come on to it because it plays such a part of the makeup of my background, right? And the impact it had in my own life. And so they were, they're very different. My mum went up there. She opened up her own ballet schools and was starting to do well. She remarried a guy called Peter, who, again, on the face of it, great guy. Was a plumber. Very different to my dad originally, because he seemed to be this caring, gentle guy, but actually came out that he was a gambling, drunk coke addict. But she never knew that at the start, and people's masks slip over time. So they, that failed. But I got a beautiful sister from it called Victoria, who has had her own struggles.
What's even more amazing is what I really appreciate about you is how you speak about it with so much transparency, and how you're able to recognize that really that was the problem, and you're able to see it now in hindsight. But I just wonder, have you actually ever thought about it and seen it the same way when you were back there, like when you were still in the UK? Like, were you able to recognize the problems as you see them right now? Or you've only come to understand and realize the demons that your father had to fight as you stepped out and started looking at things from the outside?
Yeah, do you know what? I think there was and I feel this generally. I can only say from a man's perspective, but
Yeah.
there is points in our life when we get a huge dose of around our own actions, our own behaviours, maybe
Yes.
actions and behaviours of others we've grown up around, or behaviours, you know. And I have this saying, and I use it in business a lot, is I will never criticise personality, because personality is crafted from environment. But what I can and what we can change is our behaviours, because
Well said.
we're choosing those.
Well
But
said.
personality is ingrained in us.
Yes.
That doesn't mean we
You
have
can't
to.
control what you're a product of your environment.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Now,
But you can change your reaction to things and how you handle them.
yeah, exactly that. You know, Stoicism 101, I guess.
Exactly.
From that respect. And I just, you know, I look at it and think there was moments through my life where I look back and think I wasn't great as a human. Like, I really wasn't great. And I'll never make excuses for it. And never ever will I make excuses for my behaviours. But what I will say is this: I learned each one. And often, you know, people say to me, Ben, you're past, and you know, how did you beat it? It was never about beating it. It's never about that. It was about embracing it. Because from embracing it, I can learn, right?
Yeah. Because then you're not in denial.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Because if you're in denial, you're always going to play the victim card. And you're always
Exactly
going
my
to be
point.
like, oh, you know, because of this, but if you embrace it, as you said, to your point, you're like, okay, this is a problem. What can I do about it?
And life has a funny way. Just being life can throw
Yeah.
things at you. And if you're not, you'll never. Sometimes you'll never be ready for it, right?
Yeah.
But it's the way you react to things. That's the difference for me, and that's something that I've certainly learned as I've matured. It was you can choose how you react to things, right? And that is how you can make better decisions.
Yes.
Not always the right one, but certainly the better one.
And if you make them independent of emotions too, when needed.
When needed, right? And I think everything in this world is connected. If we look at each and every one of us, one defining factor, regardless of your religion, color, background, whatever it may be, is we all are driven by emotion. Every
Right.
one of us. Every one of us is driven by emotion. Whether that's good or bad,
Yes.
we are driven by that. So what we have to learn is to understand that there is elements where we need to control that,
Yes.
but there's also elements where we need to let it be, because it's
Yes.
part of what we are and who we are. And that's when you actually find who you are. And a lot of people, emotion is important to help us become what we're due to be. But you have to understand when to use it, when not. And
Yes.
I think that's something that people do generally struggle with. And
Yes.
how many times you interview, they sit there and go, yeah, maybe emotion got the better of me, and we made a bad decision, right?
100%.
It's part
I
and
mean,
parcel.
I mentioned this many times on my podcast, and I talk about it, and I highly advise it to anyone that's in business or in general in life. Whenever you're faced with something, like let's say a piece of, I don't know, a letter or an email,
Yeah.
or bad email, or bad news, or
Yeah.
this or that, give yourself 24 hours and sleep on it. I promise you, you will never react to it the same way that you react to it on the spot.
Agreed.
If you give yourself 24 hours, I call it the 24-hour rule, you just develop this very, I don't know, like a little bit of clarity and a little bit of wisdom comes when you sleep on things.
It does, and 24-hour rule, spot on. For me, I have this saying of, no one's going to die. It's not. The decision you
Yeah.
make, right or wrong, it's not, none of us sit in a position of, it's life or death, right?
Yeah. And no one should force you to
and
do
no
that.
one should force you that.
Right, right. You
Exactly.
have free will, so you could stand your ground, be like, listen, I'm just not going to react to it. And again, to your point, it's Stoicism 101. Like, I need to just...
Yeah, and from, we'll no doubt come on to it, but when I talk about leadership and management styles, and I always led in the past with personality and ego, quite frankly. I was egotistic, where it was my way or the highway, and I never looked and tried. I didn't want to quite understand the way that someone else did things or saw things in the world, because I felt that I knew better. And it was only actually when I matured and I started to learn, I started to read more, which with someone with ADHD is difficult to read, to stay dialed in. That
That's
actually,
so true.
Yeah.
That's why I use Audible. I don't... I
No,
can't.
exactly, right? That it gave me the ability to actually understand that the best form of leadership is serve.
Yeah.
Understand people. Understand what makes them tick. Understand what their why factor is.
Yeah.
Why do they get out of bed? Why do they want to be? And ironically enough, that level of thinking actually took me right back to my childhood. with
Right.
my father, with his actions, and my mother's. Why did they act like? What was it? Was it environment? Why? What was it from that?
I think they were just. I mean, your mom seemed like she was very well grounded, but I think maybe for you that it could be like most other fathers, which is projecting a lot of their insecurities and unhappiness onto the ones they love the most because they're just easy targets.
Yeah, and I think when I look at my father, bless him, he was a very strong man, very strong-willed, great personality, like unbelievable guy. Like literally, anyone who knew him was like, he's the most charming. He would do, his moral compass was very, very good. Like
It's amazing, right? It's amazing that troubled people, sometimes troubled men like that, tend to have a very good moral compass as opposed to others.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's fascinating how it's just a complete opposite combination of two things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about, and then again, we're talking about my upbringing, but now I look at my father's and think, well, he got beaten up by his dad.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's hard. How do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Because again, looking at that, why was his dad like that? What, where did it all? Because you can follow it all the way back, right?
Right.
Trauma goes through generation.
Of course.
Until someone goes, okay, I understand.
This is where it stops.
But this is where it stops. And I feel that's. I have an internal project which I call breaking the chain. For me, that trauma stops. From that.
It starts with one generation.
Correct.
Because as to your point, which was very well said, Dr. Bruce Limpton, you should definitely read his book. It's called The Biology of Belief, and he talks literally about how the trauma is passed on. And it's not just passed on, but it actually goes into your DNA. Scientifically proven that it actually gets passed on to your offsprings until someone comes along and be like...
Yeah, exactly. And I look at my father and I think he had such a big heart. And he would, we'd be in shopping, Sainsbury's, and we didn't have loads of money. And there'd be like a little old lady in front of us, right? He'd be buying her shopping. He'd be like taking it to the car for her. If there was traffic, he'd stop. He'd literally stop his car and let people cross the road. People would be beeping. He'd be like, no, come on. And he'd
some small gestures like this.
Huge gestures and animals. Like he was the most. I remember, coming downstairs and again when he was, running nightclubs for people we read about in books or in films or whatever you want to call it. I'd come downstairs and he'd be, nursing a deer, like a baby deer that had been hit on the road, and he's coming back from the nightclub at 4 or 5 in the morning. He's picked up, I've got Bambi jumping around my front room in the morning, but he's had birds, cats, dogs, like, he would look after them all. And that was like his release, I guess, saying earlier, that was that little bit of nurture. And when I think about him, like he was capable of unbelievable violence. And some of my earliest memories of my mum and dad, and I went to live in London when they split up, and I went from, say, Sussex, which was a very nice area, certainly at the time, to a, not a ghetto, but not far off, right? In an environment that I didn't know anyone, I didn't understand it, I was a nice kid almost. And it was really tough, really hard. And I did primary school. We went from East to Bexley Heath, and that was a little bit better. But my dad was Peter, his name was a terrible human, in fact, right? Terrible. Doesn't even speak to his own children, and that for me is a measure of every man.
Of course.
How you treat your children.
Of course.
And but yeah, so it is. It is interesting the way it comes around. But when I look about my father and the troubles that he had, and some of my earliest memories were, armed police kicking down the door because he had a series of guns. Like that was, that, and he was, he was like
quite the character, huh?
Oh, completely.
Quite the character.
Completely. And
I can only imagine how charismatic he would be, because when you got so much, I don't know how can I say, so much color in your life.
Yeah.
You seem almost. Like supernatural, right?
Yeah.
Like you just have this aura that like you're
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, he was a handsome man.
Yeah.
There you go. He was charismatic and he loved women. Like there's no doubt
I'm
about
sure
it.
Women loved him too.
Yeah. That, he had many girlfriends, probably 2 for every day of the week, I think, at times. But yeah, and he had his own demons, and it was funny that actually later in life.
Do you think he ever came to face his demons?
Yeah, I do actually.
I was actually going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I did. But I think, again, we talk about moments, right? So there was a point in his life where he was not wayward, I wouldn't say it's the right word, but he was on the verge of frenzy quite a lot. And what I mean by that was when something didn't quite go his way. I remember like he had an argument with his girlfriend, and the house that we lived in, that I was in, right? He threw petrol over it and was going to blow it up with me in it and him. Because when he lost his temper like that, he didn't see anything other than
blackout.
Blackout, and you know, I remember I used to get carving knives. Big. He was he could throw a knife and stick into it, amazing. And he just stood there like cutting himself to ribbons with a knife in front of me, and I was no more than 10, 11 maybe, like cutting it. And I remember thinking, why are you doing that? Like it didn't make any sense. But now when I look back, I think that's ridiculous to see that as a child. But I'd almost become numb to that behaviour, as weird as it sounds. And it didn't, I don't see him go, it affected me. It didn't, which is odd, because it probably should have done.
Actually, this is what is really fascinating me, is that you could have really followed his footsteps. Right?
Like all my family are villains, right? They've in that. I said to you earlier, like
they're just stuck in, they're just stuck in that circle.
Completely, and like I said, my dad ran nightclubs in London. My uncle, I love him dearly, and no doubt I hope he watches it. But he was one of the main guys in the ICF football hooligans. He's in films, you know. I think he's 64 now, but he still loves it. You know, he's still on the terraces, still fighting. And I look at him, right? I'm talking about my father, and he had a really tough upbringing. There was my father, my uncle, and my auntie. They all, you know, had tough upbringings, right? Really tough. My uncle Colin, he ended up in a borstal. If you ever watch a film called Scum, I would, you know, dark, really dark. It was banned in the UK by the Queen. That's how dark it was.
Oh, wow.
And it showed about life in borstals in the 60s and 70s, the sexual assault, the beatings, the racism. They were like horrible places. And he got sent there because he played truant from school. He then met a guy, a young lad, and they sort of ran away. He was from the East End of London. They'd run away from the borstal, and they'd be hiding in chimney breasts. You know, it was proper, we call it apples and pears, like hiding upstairs, and all these sorts of bits and pieces. And you know, I had a real tough, you know, upbringing. And my auntie, bless her, she died at 41, cancer, stomach cancer, very rare form. But she was like the matriarch. Like they both were scared of her. Like she ruled the roost. And we all lived in a council estate in a place called East Grinstead, Copyhold. And we lived here, my auntie lived here, and my nan lived here, and my uncle sort of lived with my nan. And it was this little circle, and we didn't have much money, right? And we'd go around, but we'd all look after each other. It was very united. And then, obviously, my auntie passed away, and then obviously my father passed away, and it was my uncle left. It was a weird dynamic the way it worked.
So what did Ben do, or when did Ben realize? At what age did he realize? Okay, this is where it stops, and this is where I'm gonna, like you said, break the cycle or break the chain or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and
there must have been like a moment of epiphany. Yeah. Where, like you said, a moment of clarity where everything you're like, okay.
Yeah, I've had a few.
But when was the first one? Like, let's say the major one. Or
I would say the major one was when I turned 16, actually. Young.
Really?
Yeah, young.
At 16?
Young. Yeah, because
very young.
Yeah, because my father was in London. I was looking after a 3-bedroom house on my own at 12, 13. Yeah, and I had my auntie around the corner, my nan. You know, I was drinking. I was, you know, up to all sorts. I was like sexually active. I was like, when I look now, I think it's ridiculous, the things I was doing so young. And when I got to 16, my father, you know, bless him, was in that way. I just thought to myself, I don't want my life to, I need to understand it.
Were you faced with this particular situation? Like, were you faced with a specific incident?
Yeah, actually, me and my father, we had a huge disagreement in the kitchen, and he'd never, and even to this day, never actually laid a hand on me. But I swung for him. I was brave enough to swing for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
At 16.
I mean, that was a brave move. A stupid one in hindsight.
He could have been killed.
He spent all weekends running nightclubs fighting people. That was what he did, right?
Exactly.
And that's that. Now I'm talking his language, right? He loves that. That's what he's here for. Yeah. And he grabbed me and he said, "Don't ever do that again. Don't ever." And he squeezed me so hard, and I thought, yeah. I started to see traits in myself that I was becoming almost like a hybrid of my father and my uncle, because I was going West Ham, and you know, I thought I was wearing stupid sovereign rings, and I was sort of trapped between wanting to be a a football hooligan, a gangster, and actually I was neither any of them.
Yeah.
I was me, but I was so confused. And now whether that's my ADHD, whether that's I don't really know. I was just confused, and that little moment of clarity was like, actually, do you know what? I don't want to be any of that.
Yeah.
I want to be me, but I don't know what me is.
Yeah.
I had no
It's
idea.
just amazing. At 16 it almost feels like, I don't know, I'm gonna go on a limb and say it's almost like God sent, right? Like, because to get that moment of clarity at such a young age, very rare.
Yeah.
Very rare. People usually don't come out of it until the late 20s, early 30s.
Completely. And like I've said to you before, I don't align with a religion per se.
Yeah.
But what I align with is a higher being. Now, what that is, what that looks like, I've got no idea what that is. I just feel that the universe moves in certain ways.
There's someone keeping checks and balances.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, when I look at, I ended up buying a house in a place called Hayward Heath with my now wife, right? And when we went to buy it, I didn't really give it a second thought, but I drove to it every day from the station going into London, and I actually drove past that it's now apartments, but it was a mental asylum where my father actually ended up. So he ended up having a breakdown at 31, and he sat, didn't blink, for 10 months staring at a wall, being fed through a tube. Not many people actually know that. And that was the reason why I then ended up going to live with my mum for that period. Because
how old were you at that time?
So when I was then, so I would have been, it's 31, I would have been 7.
Oh, wow.
7, 8. So just in primary school.
Bro, you were exposed to so much from such a young age.
Yeah, so you know, so much. And, you know, people say to me, you know, if you could change it, would you? I'm like, I wouldn't. And I'll tell you why, because you have a choice in this life.
Yeah.
You can let things affect you and you can sit there and go, why me? Or you can learn from it and realise that actually, yeah, shit, it was bad, right? There's no doubt about it. But it doesn't have to define who you are. You can use it as fuel. And that's why that moment at 16. And there was something else as well that happened. I can't remember if it was before or after that moment, but I said to you before, we had like a 2-year type deal at Palace as a kid. When I look back, I was never good enough to play professional football because I thought I was 10 times better than what I actually probably was, right? And some people might say I still think that now with football, but and I went on a trial in Greece, and my girlfriend at the time and her family, they went, oh, well, we'll come with you, right? And it just so happened I knew someone through my network who had a small hotel in Santorini, randomly on the beach, right? So we went and stayed with them. I went and done my trial with Olympiacos, and my girlfriend at the time, she had a brother called Aaron. He had brittle bones and unbelievable character, and he will live with me for forever. He never let it get it down. He would sneeze and break both his legs. He would, he had to have a winch to get him out of bed. He had a wheelchair, but his smile was infectious. That amazing character. And when we was in Greece, he went away with his school and had an accident, unfortunately, in a place called the Bow Ship Roundabout in his wheelchair, and he broke all his bones. They sent him to Eastbourne General for assessing. It wasn't the first time, but this was more severe. My girlfriend at the time, her mum had to we had to get a boat to Athens, Athens back, as soon as possible. We were still there because we didn't know the severity. We all flew back. They airlifted him to King's College, and we flew in, we went up there, and they said, like, he's not going to make it. He's 15. And watching his mum tell a 15-year-old that, stop fighting, you can't win, fucking hell. Breaks my heart now even. Makes me want to cry now. That changed. That really changed my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you see men like this, when you see situations like this, you start wondering, if someone has it that hard, I should not complain about anything that I'm going through.
And his energy was infectious. Like, he was the life and soul. Like the poor, he was always in constant pain. Could you imagine living your life in constant pain? But he would still be out. He had like an electric wheelchair. Right, and he'd be out in the town, and he'd be like, it used to be called Woolworths, so we don't have it now. And it was a young girl in there that he liked, and he'd go in there and he'd talk to her, and he'd try and chat her up, and I'd be like, fair play to you. Like, I love that. I love that energy about him.
Don't you think now in hindsight that he was that you guys crossed paths for a reason. You cannot possibly tell me that this guy did not come into your life for no reason, and because you obviously dated that girl, and then her brother just happens to be that way, and it was for him to teach you a lesson. And probably one of the most valuable lessons.
Powerful lesson, absolutely. And I think he was an amazing person, right? Amazing. And I think at the time, I because I'm young, right? I'm young, dumb, and full of my own self-importance like that. But when I look back now, I look back and think what that family went through as well, like his mum, obviously my girlfriend at the time, and the rest of it. How do you comprehend that? How do you comprehend the loss of a child?
It's very intense.
How hugely intense.
It's very intense.
And I didn't really understand it, if I'm honest. Maybe I was immature as well, you know, I'd say that. But the lesson I learned, and even down to, he went to a special school, I think it was called St. Valiant in Caterham. And I would go there and go and play with all the children, right? And I hate the word special, I hate the word unique needs. It's so much better.
Or the way people call it here, people of determination. I love it. That's the name they give it here.
Absolutely, right? And to go in there and seeing these children who, you know, for whatever reason have been put on this planet with this, you know, whatever you want to call it, right? With these unique powers, seeing them smile, it lit up my life. Like, I'll never forget it. And I'd love to go there, and I'd help, like, play football. We'd use a sponge ball, but obviously not everyone could kick a ball. And we'd work our way around it. And that was massive for me, hugely. And I'd never forget that. And I think you learn lessons through life. And I think I've been blessed enough for these certain people to come into my life where I've learned those lessons, because I often think that where would I be if I hadn't have learnt those
100%
learnt those lessons, and what does that look like? And I sit here and I think, I'm 42 now, and my life has been, I mean, if I wrote a book, I don't know if anyone would believe it, and I don't, and I wouldn't blame them. I wouldn't blame them for not believe. I get it. Like it's been so.
And there are probably some things that you're even too ashamed to even like talk about and embarrassed. But again, they made you who you are today. You've overcome your demons. We're here today.
Completely.
You have a beautiful family, beautiful wife, beautiful kids. Not just, I mean, and obviously more to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I look at my life, right? And I haven't been a perfect human, far from it. And I've treated people unfairly, and I've been aggressive, and I've been violent to people that I'd like to think the majority of them actually deserved it, but there is one or two, you know.
There's always a few that do deserve it. Honestly, you shouldn't feel too bad.
No, but each one you can learn a lesson from, right? And I try and carry that into my daily life, and it is tough, right? And I think, you know, like I've got a beautiful daughter, 12 years old. Again, she just, obviously the apple of my eye, right? She's actually, this jacket is dedicated to my daughter.
Really?
Yeah, there. I don't know if you can read that. But
I'll read it. Our Father's love transcends the boundaries of time and space. As a silent promise whispered across. What?
Whispered across the ocean.
Yeah, whispered across the winds that blind hits hard to fit.
Forever. Yeah, so it's a bit, sorry, it's the way it's done, it's only new, but...
Forever intertwined.
But, forever intertwined. So basically, my
Amazing.
Yeah, so my father, he passed away at 55 from plastic non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So he felt ill, went to the doctors, they were like, what do you think, you've got glandular fever? And they were like, all right, you run its course. He still felt really bad, he had big lumps on his neck, he went back, and they went, good news and bad news. It was like, bad news, it's cancer. Good news is we've caught it really early. It's like stage 1. We'll be able to treat it. Need a bit of chemo, you'll be good. Call came in 2 days later after that. Actually, we've got that wrong. We've read you the wrong results.
Oh my God.
It's actually plastic non-Hodgkin's. And if you survive 12 months, you've done well. Imagine that, roller coaster. And by that point, he's had three more brothers, right? He's met my stepmom, fall madly in love with her. And they have 3 beautiful babies, right? And again, they have an interesting relationship. They loved each other, hated each other, loved each other, hated each other, but somehow it just really worked. And she really helped him, you know, ground.
Yeah.
And also just to go back, like you said, he spent 10, 11 months in a mental ward, right?
Yeah.
Didn't blink, got foot for a tube, and then one day woke up and he came back round spiritual. Like for him, he just felt that he was in a catatonic state, but his brain was active. The rest of his body had shut down because it's too much stress. He was he hit his mental breaking point. And he come out of it, and he started to be able to read tarot cards, and he started to be able to read auras, and he'd have conversations with people that were dead. And that sounds absolutely bizarre, and I get it. But to give an example, he met my stepmom, Nikki, in the nightclub. You know, got on really well. Went out for a few dates. Goes to the urine. He's going for, you know, using the bathroom, and he feels something, a presence. And it was her nan who had passed away a month before, but he didn't notice at this time. And she was like, I need you to speak to her and say to her, why did she pawn my bangle that I left her?
Why did she what, sorry?
She pawned, she took it into a pawn shop to get some money for it because she didn't have any money to feed her children. So he's gone back and gone, you're not going to believe me when I say this. She was like, what's the matter? She was like, I've just met your nan.
A voice.
Yeah, a voice, yeah. And she was like, what? She was like, she died a month ago. He went, yeah, I know. He went, and you pawned her bangle. Why did you do that? And she just started crying.
That's insane.
So when I talk about a higher power, whether that episode helped him open his, you know, there's different ways, different religions call it different things, to into that different realm. I don't know, but yeah, I always found that amazing. And he then ended up being an advisor to a barrister for the UN during the war crimes in Sierra Leone.
Wow.
And he was advising him on just certain things. Around it.
What a colorful guy! Like I mean,
honestly,
it's so colorful.
Yeah, but like I could sit and just talk about my father and my mum. To be fair, I don't want to miss her out. But
I was gonna actually ask you about that. Like, how was your relationship with your mom? Because you seem very close to your dad, despite your disagreements. But he seemed like an overall good person.
No, he was. He was.
You know, and that's something to be proud of. But what about your mom? Like, how was your relationship with her?
So with my mum, we were early on in my life. She was everything to me. There's no doubt about it. And I was talking to my wife this morning about it, because I said her best friend's over at the moment. She's going through her own difficulties, her ex-husband. The early part of my life, I remember sitting on a windowsill and free to close. And you sit here, and I was only small, and I could look out along the road, and I'd always be waiting for my father. She was like, he'll be here. He said he's going to come and pick you up today. And he wouldn't. And she'd be like, oh, maybe he's just got stuck at work. And she was just making excuses for him. And she was there for everything for me. Her side of the family, my granddad, my nan, her sisters, they were everything for me, right? And then as I got a bit older, and I was, become a bit Jack the Lad, we moved, and obviously my father did, and I went to live with them, and we had nothing. Like, we were poor, and then they would go to the pub in Bexley called the Bricklayers Arms, and me and my stepbrother, Trevor, we'd be sat in the corner with like a drink, like a cheap Coke and a bag of crisps for hours and hours and hours on end. There was nothing. There wasn't really a TV then. And as time grew on, I sort of resented that. I resented the life that I had. And I wouldn't say I resented it, but when the opportunity came, I couldn't wait to go back to my dad. And I don't know if it's because I was getting a bit older, becoming a bit more worldly, and I was sort of, my father is this charismatic figure, and I'm not sure my mum ever really forgave me for that. And I don't blame her. We had a relationship where I knew she'd be there for me if I ever needed her, and she was, and she really, really was. But she also, I wouldn't say is hugely maternal either. She was, she started life as a professional ballet dancer. She had her own school. She had her own life. Loved going to Ibiza even in her 50s, like dancing on she was very much that, quite into, she had her own little network of friends, and it was her life, her bubble, and I didn't always fit into that. But then I was just as guilty because I wasn't trying to fit into it. Because I had my own life away from it, and and sometimes it's only when people pass away do you actually think, do you know what, I could have done more. And actually, to be fair, we probably both sat there and said the same thing. But
I mean, in hindsight, everything looks
it's
so
2020,
much,
right? Everything is 20.
It's just unbelievable how well, I mean, rightfully so, because at the moment you don't really realize what you're going through until you're out of it, until you really bring yourself out of the situation, out of the environment,
Yeah.
and you start looking at things with a very, let's say, clear lens, with a very clear lens.
Yeah, of course. And like, you know, my father would always say to me, well, I was giving her money and like she was buying herself dresses and she'll be going, well, he never gave me. And it was always that little bit of he said, she said.
Yeah.
But actually, in later life, they actually started to get on really well, which was bizarre for me.
Yeah.
And even my dad, I remember we went to Cornwall. We took my brothers, we went down there. My granddad on my mum's side had retired down there. And they hadn't seen each other for like 25 years, 30 years. And my mum was like, why don't you go and say hello to your, you know, they're elderly. And I was like, cool. My father, I think, had just been diagnosed with it. And my granddad came out and they embraced and they shook hands. Which, again, is one of those moments where I think, wow, because they hated each other. Yeah. They were very different sides of the tracks, right? And, you know, my guy would have hated him for the way he treated his daughter, as I would. Being a father now myself, right? I, you know, my daughter is my world. And if anyone treated her in a certain way, then I would, you know, react accordingly. So I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my relationship with my mum was, I knew she was there, which was, I think, is a big thing. I never thought, oh, my mum's not there for me. She was always there for me. But my father was the one I always radiated to because he was like this action hero in some respects to me. You know, I did always look up to him. I feared him. I had a healthy fear of him. And actually, I think that is missed a little bit in today's society. Yeah. I think children are, you know, that they've all got rights, all of us. And they have, right? Don't be wrong. But actually, you should always have a healthy fear of your father that if he says now, you stop that.
Yeah. There should be some sort of discipline, and that's I even apply it with my own son. Like I mean, sometimes, as you said, to your point, there should be a healthy amount of fear from a son towards his father, because if you don't have a line that you draw that he cannot cross, then anything goes, right? And if anything goes, then it's not really a father-son relationship anymore, right? Because a father should shelter his son to a certain extent. He should expose him to things, but as I said before, there's a very fine line between being a responsible parent or responsible father to a son, where you allow him to experience things and then being careless.
Exactly, and I think for me now, a lot, not all, but a lot of men now they want to be their son's best friend, right? They want to be seen as their mate. Where, okay, I want him to know he can come and talk to me, but I also want him to understand that there is a way the world works.
Yeah.
And my job is here to guide you of that, and I'm not your mate.
And there's one captain on the ship.
Yeah.
Right.
You only have one captain at the helm.
That's it, and that's how it should be. But that being said, and given the great memories and the great relationship that you had with your father, bless him, did you actively try or seek any sort of guidance or mentorship from anybody else outside the family or within the family to sort of maybe cover or sort of fill the gap that you felt you needed to be filled? Do
you know what? No, but not a person per se, but what I would say is this: like, I grew up on a council estate. There was other kids on council estates in the area, and there was always like that rivalry, shall we say, right? And I was always, I was good at football, and I met a guy, and he's still my best mate to today, right? Guy called David Garrett, unbelievable guy, and we had this unity. He was from an estate called Stone Quarry, right? And it was rough. Like, everyone knew Stone Quarry for the same reason they knew Copyhold. There was like Stone Quarry, Copyhold, Orchard Way, Sackville Gardens. The boys from Sackville Gardens were out mugging old people, doing drugs, drinking. And
all the rough kids were those days.
Yeah, but it was all rough, ironically enough. But some of us just had better moral compasses than others, right? And maybe that's because of for me, it was certainly my father's influence. And listen, I met this kid, and we had an unbelievable friendship, and then I met the rest of this little network of friends. So some of us knew our father, some of us didn't, but we become together as like a collective, and it was a strong bond.
It was a brotherhood.
Yeah, a brotherhood, absolutely. And I think in today's world, brotherhood gets so overlooked, and it's so important for men to be around other men. At this time, we were boys. You know, we were, but David's mum, Kath, try and think where I'd be without her sometimes. She was washing my clothes, she was
Amazing.
feeding me, like, yeah, amazing woman.
Yeah.
And we would all stay at Dave's house, right? Because she was like, oh, come here, I'll do your dinner. Look, and like, I'd go to school, but I'd be staying at his house because my dad was like in London or, you know, at girlfriend number 5 or whatever. Like, you know, and I never, because I felt like from the age of 12, 13, I was, and I wasn't, but I felt like I was a man. Like I was, you know, man about town. Everyone knew I was. I had the surname that everyone knew. Like, you know, I used to go to the under-18s nightclub at 15. I'd come out and then I'd go down the over-18s. And like, because the doorman just didn't want to stop my dad, so I could do what I want. So I'd be like drinking alcohol at 15 in a nightclub when I shouldn't have been anywhere near it. So, but then so we was this, you know, this little collective, and even to this day, he sends me messages probably every other day, going,
"That's
"You're killing
amazing."
it." And I'll be like, yeah, like we're doing well, aren't we? Both of us doing well. So it's that. So I didn't have anyone I would look, you know, I looked up to. I wouldn't say there was an older man or who I looked towards. I almost felt like I didn't need that. I know that sounds bizarre, but one thing I would say is, like, obviously when I met my daughter's mum, a lady called Harley. Her father, a guy called Paul Thorpe, actually big. He's got a big YouTube channel, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yes. We talked about it.
Was a big watch dealer. That retired now. You know, had a seriously interesting life. You know, worked for Al Fayed in Harrods. He was a big Fulham fan. Built the first website back in the day, the internet, and sold it to Al Fayed. So, and then ended up working for him. Which again, you know, was interesting. But I radiated towards him a lot, and he really helped me actually. And even to this day, I still speak to him, probably once, twice a week. He lives in the UK. You know, he lives 15 minutes from my daughter, and he has a huge impact in my daughter's life. And I feel blessed for that, 100%. And like you, so I would say that was probably late. That was later on in my life. Like, my father passed away when I was 28. And I think it was when I was 24, 25, something like that. And you know, it was a very positive influence. And yeah, and I think, you know, again, I wouldn't talk about my father too much, but
no, I mean, this podcast is about you. You can say whatever you want. Probably
we will get into business at some point. I promise
exactly.
you. But
so it's just, this is raw. So honestly, like, I'm enjoying every minute of this, and I'm sure other people would.
Yeah, and like like I said, my father was diagnosed as terminal. He thought it was highly ironic. He'd dodged being shot. He's been stabbed more times. I come in the front room and he's stitching his arm up where he'd been stabbed. You know, he had stab wounds all over him, right? He'd been shot at, hit with hammers. Like you can imagine, right? If you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. Was the way, and he was fine with that. But living by something that he can't fight, he thought it was ironic. He just thought, he actually thought it was funny. As weird as that sounds, and I remember we were going to the Royal Marsden in Sutton, and he'd refractured, and they couldn't get his white blood count low enough to do bone marrow stem cells, all that sort of stuff. And I was going to look to try and send him to Pennsylvania. Hershey's clinic there, they had a remarkable drug called Valcade, and it wasn't available in the UK. And it was £250,000, and I was like,
oh wow,
yeah, just for the treatment, right? And he was like, Ben, you're not, you know, and I didn't have the money at the time. I really didn't, but I would have found a way. Like, but he was like, no. Anyway, we went there and they said, listen, you've refractured. There is no more treatment you can do. It's palliative care. We're going to fill you full of steroids. You've probably got 2 weeks. And he was like, I was obviously driving back with him, and he was like laughing. I was thinking, you know, when you shouldn't be laughing, because this is life or death, right? You've just been told that he's going to die. He said, but we remember it, but we're all dying.
Yeah.
He's like, I just know where mine's going to be now.
Yeah.
And he was like, I can take peace in that. And I was like, okay. And when he met my stepmom, they'd always tried to have a little girl, and they only had boys. And every time they, you know, the pregnancy started, and they found it was a girl quite late on, and miscarried, and it broke both of them, really did. And he said to me, I'll never forget it. I'm going to give you a gift. When you're ready, I'm going to give you a gift. And at the time, I was thinking, fucking hell, sorry, not my name, but why? What could this be? He said, I'll give you a gift. And then on the day that he passed away 2 years later, I found out my then partner was pregnant. And I knew it was a girl.
Amazing.
And I said, about the universe, call it what you will. And it was a girl. And I'd already painted all the room. I'd done everything because I already knew. We didn't even bother having a scan. I didn't need to know. I knew. Hence why. I mean, every kid is special, right? And my little boy is special for so many different reasons. But my little girl, my first, and because of the circumstance, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, because like I understand the amount of emotions that you're going through because it's just you've been so hardened, and he's been so hardened by so much that went on in your life that these moments when they come, they just like they bring all of your guards down, all of that aggression, all of that, and then you're like, okay,
harmony.
Now it makes sense.
Yeah, harmony.
Now I understand.
Honestly, it was, it was, you know, and again, I said, you look at poignant moments, right? I look back and think, wow, like what a moment. And I'll never get, I was driving an Audi S5, white Audi S5, it was my company car. And after you said that, I couldn't find words, I just couldn't find anything. And the whole drive was like 35 minutes back to his screens. I couldn't say anything. And I've got a picture somewhere of him. He loved motorbikes. He had a Harley Davidson Fat Boy, and it's still in the shed where he left it today.
Oh wow!
And he's been past 14 years.
No, amazing.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. And I think back.
You should put it in your house somewhere inside. Like
I'm going to literally.
Like a piece of art.
Yeah, exactly. And that's. And it's meant I've got a picture of him somewhere sticking his middle finger up, going 2 weeks, like whatever. And it's. It was mad.
A beautiful, I don't know, a beautiful, I wouldn't say gangster, no, it's a beautiful, it's hard to describe him, it's just, it's, the words can't really come to me right now.
And then I think about, you know, I felt, you know, he passed away in his own bed, listening. He loved Native American history. He loved Navajo Indians. He loved that. Again, it was that spiritual element of the, you know, the teepees and the hot tents and that sort of stuff. And you know, it was poorly. And the doctor come round, gave him the injection. We're like, right, that's, you know, he's gone now. And we had the music playing in the background. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, because it was actually quite peaceful. Really strange. And but you think about trauma, as it were. And I remember the stairs in Frida Close, they're still the same now, right? They were terrible stairs. And we had to call the private ambulance. We had to put him in a body bag. And they couldn't carry him down the stairs. I carried him down the stairs with them in a body bag and put him in the back of an ambulance. It's dark, isn't it? Yeah. I sit here and say, feeling proud. I know it's bizarre. It's very bizarre. But I don't know. I just felt that we go on to be more. So it was almost like the end of his journey, but the beginning of another. And that's where, like again, it's not religion. I identify with elements of Islam. I identify with elements of Christianity, Sikhism, Hindu, like the whole. I just believe in something a bit bigger. So I was upset, of course, right? But actually, I just felt that the trauma that he'd had the whole of his life, he was at peace now, and that meant that I could almost be at peace. Weird.
It's the universe works in a funny way because it's like I would say it's as almost, let me describe it in the right way. It's almost as if his trauma and what he had to go through was some sort of liberation for you so that you don't have to follow through the same path.
Yeah.
Because I think life would have not been the same for you if you did not go through what you went through with your dad. No. And witness the things and the hardship and all these dark but beautiful moments at the same time, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
From a young age really made you who you are today, and there's no doubt about that. And I'm sure you would agree.
No, 100%. And you know, at the start of our conversation, I said my father was beautifully dangerous. Yeah. And that's what I mean by it. He was a beautiful man. He was a a fantastic human in lots of ways. But we all have a darkness. We all have a darkness. And you know, I carried that. We're talking about ADHD, and I carried that darkness with me for a long time. But I didn't know what it was. But I just felt that, I always felt like I had an angel and a devil on my shoulder. You know, I know it's a common misconception that people have angels and devils and etc. But I felt that as long as I won more days than I lost, I would do okay. And honestly, I felt that going through life sometimes, I would do things and behave a certain way, and I'd be like, why have I done that? But you know, we live and we learn. We live and we learn, and you know, I think for me, there's been many things in my life, and I've been so blessed, right?
Yeah.
Like not long after my father, you know, passed away, I had my own business. I was building it in the background. My business partner, unfortunately, was an old gentleman whose intentions were ill. That he was looking, I was making the money, and I wasn't getting anything out of it that I needed. And I was on Twitter, which is random. And there was a local guy from Abu Dhabi, and I was like, we needed a local partner at the time to trade in Abu Dhabi. We're doing loads of stuff in the energy sector. And I tweeted him and just said, I need a partner, you interested? He was like, yeah. Crazy as it was. Mansour bin Jabbar. Yeah. Great guy. Listen,
how long ago was this?
This was 2011 or 12. Okay. If I remember. And, you know, tweeted him. And anyway, you know, they were a local partner. I sold the business because I wanted out. And I ended up living here and working with them. You know, they are like one of the most poignant families in this region. And I was working with these like billionaires, Emirati guys and girls.
In Abu Dhabi.
In Abu Dhabi, yeah. Who were, you know, they own Stars and Bars. Sayed, His Excellency Sayed, his father, is one of to this day, I didn't get loads of time with him. I only met him 3 or 4 times. But, you know, when you have impact, people have impact. Yeah. And I remember the story of him here. And, you know, we're talking in the 40s, 50s, where this was, you know, the Emirates were still desert. Yeah. And they were looking to unify the nations and bring the different Emirates together and generate an armed forces and stuff. And they were looking at doing a deal with Hummer for military vehicles in the US. Is it GMC that own Hummer? I think it is. Yeah.
GMC does own it. I mean, I don't know if they owned it at that time, but.
And so he did a deal because you had to have a local partner here to do business, which again, I think is an unbelievable thing they did here to help the local population create wealth. I think it's amazing. There is so much. I bore people to tears with how much the West can learn from the UAE. Like honestly, from here. But
from the West, the West could learn from the UAE, the Middle East in general.
Yeah. So you know, he was a big family here, and he then got a contract to be the middleman to supply into the newly formed government, newly formed military, and then over time they tried to cut him out the equation, and he said to them, vowed, I won't say the word they called him, but he said, you will never sell another Hummer here as long as I'm going to build best armed vehicle the world has ever seen.
Because they try to undercut him.
Yeah, tried to cut him out the loop, and he was like, I'm from here, I'm from the sand, you know. Bedouin tribes. No one knows the desert better than these people, right? It's where they come from. It's in their DNA. We'll talk about DNA. It's in their blood. It's what makes them so special, so unique. They understand it. And he went out and he built the Nimmer. Anyone Google it. Look at this piece of machine. It's phenomenal. Phenomenal. Built it, made in the UAE. Right? He built this from a vision. And I love that. And I was sitting talking to him, and the passion that he had for this was amazing. And the government come and went, we really like this. And he was like, yeah, and I was like, it's my blood, sweat, and tears, it's my hearing. And I was like, yeah, no, we want to buy it. And he was like, well, I don't really want to sell it. And then he sold it. And it's now part of Edge Group, which is, you know, one of the real forward-thinking defence contractors owned by the government here. And he now has a Emirates Tech and he worked in the oil sector. And so all of a sudden, I've gone from a street kid from London who grew up in poverty to being around some of these really interesting people. They put me up in I lived in, I think it was Jumeirah then, in Etihad Towers on the Corniche. And we had IDEX, International Defence Exhibition. And I was like, I didn't know what this was, right? Because I'm from oil at this point, which we'll go back to how I ended up in it. But this guy was phenomenal. And I ended up in a lift, and you've got all these 5-star generals from everywhere. And just an amazing part.
You never imagined in your wildest dreams that you would be here in the UAE today where you are, if you had to like just think about yourself as a kid on the streets in London. There's no way.
I used to go to school with
like, what was it, when you were a kid, really, honestly speaking, and without any sort of like, let's say, censorship, without any sort of like holding back. What was at best your ambition when you were a street kid? Like, what did you think you could possibly be?
Do you know what? I didn't know what I could be, but let me tell you what society thought I would be, because I think that's a bigger question.
Yeah.
Because I was just written off as another council house kid who comes from a broken family, will never amount to anything. And I remember when I sat down with my counsellor at school when they, talk about jobs, and she went, Ben, as far as I'm aware, I know your family background. You've got two options. One will probably be prison. The second one, you'll probably be a labourer on a building site earning 80 quid a day. That they were my options. They were my options. That is what society had written me off to be. And I can't thank her enough for those words, because it helped ignite something in me. Because I felt special, and I know it sounds silly. I felt like I could do something, just had no idea. I had no idea to challenge it. My father wanted me to be a fireman, because that was like seen as
an
honourable job, and we come from a long list of unhonourable humans, maybe, and that was part of that, and it was seen as like stable. You can have a good career, you can retire early, you can get a pension, you can, and I think, wow, no, and I went down a football route, got released, wasn't good enough, and I walked into an office in East Grinstead once, and I had no idea. My father was like, Ben, you need to get a job, and I was like, right, doing what? He was like, I don't know, mate, but you got to work it out. I walked in to this recruitment office, as it were, two ladies, Julie and I forget the other lady's name, Karen, amazing women, loved them. They were like, I don't know, early 30s, beautiful. I was like in there, trying to be my charm, and they were like, oh, cheeky boy, like that sort of stuff, right? And they were like, we're going to find you a job. She was like, but I'm going to tell you now, you'll be rich and you'll end up in recruitment. And I was like, what's that? She's like, well, what we're going to do for you now? And I went, right, what's that? She's like, I'm going to find you a job. I was like, okay. But the concept, it made no sense to me.
Yeah.
And she's like, call me 2 days later. She's like, great news, got an interview for you. I was like, where? Rent-a-kill Initial. I was like, what? I mean, it's a weird name, but what does Rent-a-kill do? Pest control. I was like, what, you want me to go and catch rats? They were like, no. Like, Ben, we don't know you that well, but we know you're probably not cut out to go and move traps. Like, that's not your vibe. You're going to work in an office. And she went, great news, an office full of women. It's 14 women, and it'll be you and maybe one other man. And the man is the MD. And I was like, right. She was like, so it's going to be a great experience for you. And I was like, right. So I went into the interview, and I smashed it. And, like, and I loved every minute of it, because it was like every range of female. And again, at that point, I was probably following my dad's footsteps. I'd come out my shell, I'd blossomed, I'd found the gym a little bit, and I was, I wasn't short of female attention. So I've got, and I probably had a girlfriend, so she'll probably maybe kill me for that. But anyway, and I went in there, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I remember going I've been there 8 months, and I've gone to the bathroom. There was this older lady called Helen, and I didn't know her name at the time. I opened the door for her and was like, after you. Again, my father, manners, massive on manners. You open the door for people, you help old people cross the road, all these traits, right? You look after other people. It was instilled in me. So I opened it, was like, after you. She went, oh, thank you. I was like, no problem, my pleasure, have a great day. She's like, and you. Waldorf didn't think anything more of it. We had an intranet. And I was getting bored where I was, because I always have to keep on the move. And I was like, my job was to send engineers to sites to catch rats. That was my job. Right? It was limited. I was on £11,000 a year, £720 net, and I thought I was balling. I thought I'd made it. I'd arrived. Because I'd never seen that money before in my life.
Exactly.
Right? And but I wanted more. And applied on our intranet for a job in IT, because at the time everyone's going, IT, it's like, sounds great. No idea what it was, but applied for the job, go in for the interview. Who is it? Helen, the lady who's
oh my God, what?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
She went to me. You were the young man who opened the door for me. I was like, oh yeah. I said, how was your day? And she was like, it was. She went. I went home and told my husband about that, and my kids about how you held yourself and how you opened the door, and I was like, yeah, just how I was brought up.
Amazing.
And she sat down and we went through it. It was a systems analyst role. And she was like, we have an internal CRM system. We're a global business. We have offices all over the world. How would you communicate to people that don't speak English? And I said, I would use on the spot this was, a flowchart of drawings this is how you'd use it. And rather than using words, I'd use pictures, I'd use icons to follow it. She was like, I'm going to put you through, you need to go and meet the IT director. I forget how Tom his name was.
Yeah.
Old boy, in a dark office in the back of the building somewhere. Yeah. I walked in there and we got like a house on fire. And he was like, Ben, I'm going to tell you something now. He went, I'm going to give you the job. But I think it's a massive mistake. He went, I feel like I'm making a huge mistake by giving you a job, but I'm so impressed with the way you are. I've got to give you the job. I went, okay, thank you.
I'll take it.
I'll take it. He went, but you need to be in sales. You need to be in a sales job. And I was like, nah, I don't want to be in sales. I want this. Because I thought I was going to travel the world.
Yeah.
And I never forget, a friend of mine who worked for a company sent me a link to a website. Clicked on it, and it was a website that I shouldn't have been looking at. I didn't, I was silly, didn't know. And I didn't look at it once, I looked at it multiple times. I was in IT, triggered security. Yeah. They were then brought me in. I went on holiday. They were like, we're going to suspend you. I was due on holiday in Cyprus. My dad called me and were like, listen, they've fired you, gross misconduct. Oh
my God.
And I was like, shit, and he went, and the other bad news as well. And my auntie was poorly at the time. And I said, Father, is Glennis okay? He went, yeah, it was a hesitation. He went, yeah. And I knew, and she had died. She had died an hour before, and I went quiet, and I just knew she had. Weird. Again, I can't explain it. And he waited, because he didn't want to ruin my holiday. He waited till I got home and told me. And so I got fired, which is quite a recurring thing in my work career, actually. I've been fired a lot, which, in hindsight, I don't actually blame them at all. Yeah. Like, sometimes, again, I look back and think, yeah, I probably deserved to get fired every single time. So yeah, I got fired.
Would you say it was just you were too hard to
manage? I am the worst employee, and even now I'd be the worst employee in the world because I am opinionated. I have to move in my own way because I feel I see things differently to others, and that's okay. So my girl at the time was a hairdresser. She was cutting this guy's hair. Yeah. He worked for an outsourced company within cable and wireless, and she was like, "Oh, my boyfriend needs a job." He was like, "All right, set up an interview." So I went and met him. Yeah. He was selling VoIP systems. Yeah. Which was still in its infancy, and it was good. It was good. It was in like backwaters of Maidstone somewhere, so it was quite drive, but it was a bit boring. Yeah. I was coaching football at the time, and I remember cable and wireless share price was tanking, and there was rumours we were all going to get made redundant. Yeah. And it didn't really work out that great. But I was coaching football. Yeah. One of the boys' dads owned a recruitment company. A company called Mansell Recruitment. I think he would have, if he ever watches this, I'd like to think he would have forgiven me now. But he said, I think you'd be great in recruitment. And I was like, again, what's that? He went, come and have an interview with me and my team. I was like, okay. He said, not an interview. He said, we'll just have a coffee. Yeah. I was like, turn up. I got a smart pair of trousers on, shirt, no tie. Sit in a meeting room. This woman comes in, and she was like, "You here for an interview?" I was like, "Well, I'm here to meet Steve for a coffee." He went, "Yeah, he's busy, so I'm here." And I went, "Okay." She went, "Do you always turn up to an interview with no tie?" And I went, "I've come for a coffee with you." And she battered me for about 40 minutes. Absolutely battered me. And I came out of the interview, which I didn't know was an interview at the time. Steve called me and went, "How did that go, mate?" And I went, "Well, I feel like I've just been abused for about 40 minutes. And he went, "Yeah." He went, "She's great." And I went, "Are you sure?" He went, "Yeah." He went, "She absolutely loves you." Really? I went, "Is she broken?" Because I just thought she was just here to... And what she had done, she had realised by the way I was sitting, the way I was holding myself, that I was full of my own self-confidence. And she knew that actually, to get the best out of me, she had to break me a bit. It's like the military type style, right? I got the job. I walk in, day one, get my laptop out, and everyone starts laughing. They were like, "What are you doing with that?" I was like, they were like, "Don't need that. Like, there's the phone, there's your computer. You've got training tomorrow, but today you need to get on the phone." I was like, "Do what?" They're like, "Here's a script, call people." Okay. And she just hammered me. Sat opposite me, a lady called Alison Mulligan, and when we talk about people, she was a strong, still is, a strong female who I needed in my life at that time. God, if she was a bloke, I'd want to fight her. Every day, we'd be at each other. And it's only when I look back now, I think, I can't thank her enough. I would never be where I am today in business if it wasn't for her. 100%. It took 6 months for me to do my first deal. And the whole business was in construction. And a bit of IT, but mainly construction. And
so you were recruiting individuals for those domains?
Yeah, for they did a little bit of construction, a thing called CNC machinists, where they machine shop type stuff. Yeah. And I thought to myself, this is a bit boring. So
Yeah.
we're talking 2006, 2007. Construction market was booming.
So that's you would say that was your first entry into recruitment.
To recruitment.
Okay.
And it was like bowels of hell itself. Like it was
Yeah.
a tough environment for someone who'd never been in it.
Why though?
Because it's relentless. It was like you had to be on the phone. It was non-stop. You know, I had to wear a white or a blue shirt. If I hadn't shaved, I'd get sent to the shop to get a razor.
Wow.
I had to wear a tie. I had to be in a certain knot. It was like everything had to be particular.
Yeah.
You had strict KPIs that I hated. I hated structure, but I needed it. Right? It comes back to that methodology, right? And it took me a minute to adjust because, again, I was full of my own self-importance.
Right.
I thought I knew everything about everything, and it turns out that actually I knew nothing about nothing, which is, again, I'm a kid still, right?
Yeah.
So, of course. So anyway, the markets are booming. Everyone's doing construction, and the business is growing. I just felt that I didn't really like it, and I just felt two biggest commodities in the world were information. Every government and everyone
Yes.
else wants to know what everyone else is doing.
Yes.
Second one is energy. So the reason why most wars start is for oil, renewable, whatever it may be. Right?
Still is the case. Still
Still is today, right? Natural resources is probably
Yeah.
a better term. And I thought, right, that makes more sense to me. And I felt that the construction side, what comes up must go down, laws of physics. So I felt it was going to pop. So I went, right, I'm going to cold call every company in Aberdeen because I knew that's where oil was because I'd Googled it. And I got like a list. It was like yellow pages.
Wait,
right?
hold on. Cold calling them for what?
Exactly. I didn't know. Just calling them saying, do you need people? Do you need recruitment? So I had no idea. I was on a constant...
Ben, you're a piece of work.
I was on a constant... I was just on a constant blag.
You are something
And
else.
I got through to a company called ACG, and some of the team are still there now. It's now called Subsea 7. And a lady
Yeah.
called Marianne McGill answered the phone. She's still there now.
Yeah.
Stern lady. Forgive me, Mary, but you are very stern. And I don't think we speak that much now. But and she was like, I need ROV people. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. I had no idea what ROV was. I didn't know it was a robot that went under the ocean. Like I had no idea.
So you just bullshit your way through.
Oh, completely. Like, I'd love to sit here and go, no, I was an expert at it. I had no idea. But let me tell you, once I found out what it was, I was smitten. I was in love. I had this huge fear of the ocean, still do.
Yeah.
But I just loved the fantasy of the ocean, and we knew nothing about it. It's like space, right? We know more about space than we do our own oceans, even today. I think it's like something 20% of our oceans are mapped.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And you've got these robots that go under the ocean, and we can see things where it's too deep for a diver. And I was like, wow, people do this for a job. And I found a forum called ROV World, and ROV lads will watch this, they'll know what I mean. And I just managed to use my personality to build friendships with these guys and girls, and they just helped me. And
Nice.
I don't know whether it's they're all like, at this point, a lot of them are like Aberdonians or, like ex-military guys, and you've got this, cocky young Cockney, talking the way that I do, talking about ROVs. And I felt it's probably more pity. They probably felt pity for me to try and help me, but I just built this unbelievable network of these superhumans, I would call them. Even to this day, I still put them on a bit of a pedestal about what they do.
It's amazing how sometimes all it takes for you to thrive in this particular place is just to be likable. It's just to really be likable, and for you to get along with people, because if you do, everybody's willing to lend out a hand. And everyone is
100%.
willing to pull you up if you are just willing to be nice and just with everyone else.
Exactly. And I was smitten. But the internet wasn't, we're talking about LinkedIn. LinkedIn was still for the telecoms professionals. It wasn't, which it was originally set up for. It wasn't offshore people on it.
Yeah.
So I somehow managed to network. And then I thought, well, actually, this subsea engineering thing is pretty cool. Quite like this.
Yeah.
What else could I do? And then I went more into I did the offshore piece, and then I went into engineering, the actual designing of it. And again, same sort of black. I got through to a company called Advantica, a lady called Tuppence Measham. She lives in Australia now. She's on my LinkedIn, so I'm sure she'll see it. And I think I charmed her with bullshit, to be honest, a little bit. And we just got really well, and I started making placements there. And then I got into, I didn't make any placements. I started to get placements, but my first placement came with a company called Prospect FS. And I headhunted a woman called Victoria Sandston out of Rolls-Royce in Derby for a job in Nottingham. and I charged the client £8,750, and that was my first ever placement.
Wow.
You never forget your first. And she was unbelievable.
Bro, let alone the first. I cannot believe that you remember every single person that had come into your life in one way or another with the first and last name. I don't even remember the guy that I just met right now. And I think I have a great memory on some things.
Yeah.
But like you remember every single person with their full name.
Yeah.
It's just...
My head is like a Rolodex, certainly within the offshore sector. And, you know, we did that. And I thought, well, I can take this worldwide. Like, what other companies are there out there? You know, who can I call? And I was like, going through people's CVs.
That's what I want to know. Like, fast forward, how did Hydro start? Like, where was it? And I want you to also tell us about that very interesting story about the guy that really held your hand and
So, yeah, I think for me, like I said, I worked in Mansell, did this 2 years, left, set up on my own. I had my first business, right, called In Depth International. Still trading now, does a lot here in the region, funny enough. And I knew a bit more. Got into bed with a guy called Bob Ed, and he was like one of the original guys into the energy sector in Aberdeen in London. But again, I'll fast forward that because he shouldn't really have a place in it because he's not the people in the world. But during that time, I travelled the world with In Depth. I was like an MD at 22, 23. I knew nothing about business. And during that journey, I came to the Middle East. So he was like, Ben, you should go to Dubai. I was like, where's that? It was like, it's in the Middle East. I need to remember, Googling it, thinking, oh, right, okay, there's a few companies out there. Knew no one, knew nothing, got on a plane from Heathrow, Virgin Atlantic, landed. They had some of the worst weather, not as bad as what we had, but bad. It took me 6.5 hours from Dubai to Abu Dhabi. Bearing in mind, I had no idea. I got in a taxi, like, take me to, we're like, where? I was like, I think I'm staying at the Novotel. They were like, where? I was like, well, I don't know. It's like, I had no idea, right? So anyway, next day, I thought, right, it was a company called NPCC. So big company, part governmental, but I knew no one there. So I turned up to the gate, security gate, big security guard, Pakistani lad, and Arif, his name was. I started talking to him, and I was like, are you okay? I was like, well, yeah. Why? He was like, you don't know who you're here to see? You're this British guy, kid, who's turned up, going, I want to speak to someone, but you don't know who you need to speak. And I was like, I just want to speak to someone about ROV. And he was like, okay. You need to speak to a guy called Juma Side.
Yeah.
I went, all right. Goes and gets Juma from Burundi. Unbelievable. When I talk about inspirational people, he's going to hate I say this, such a modest man. He is up there for me. Grew up in central Burundi, had a civil war. The family saved money for him. He managed to get across different borders, hiding under dead bodies, all this stuff. Managed to get into South Africa. Was homeless, slept on the streets. Managed to get a job as a doorman because he was athletic guy. He was pretty handy. Then got a job as a nightman, sleeping on the floor. Put himself through university to do electronic engineering. Got a job, done really well, and then got headhunted for a job in Abu Dhabi, and then ended up in MPC. And put all his family. Amazing. That's a completely different story. But one of those people, when you said about inspirational people, Juma for me is there. Like one of them. He's going to hate that I said that. But honestly, one of the really down to earth guys. Anyway, so me and him were sitting down, and he was like, "You need to go and meet the main guy." And I was like, "Who's that?" He's like, "A guy called Tarek." It's like local guy. I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I've never met a local." Not really. I've seen a few coming through the airport. But I was nervous. I'm a street kid from East London, in the traditional dress. I don't know whether, at this point, the Western media fills you full of horror stories of the Middle East, right? And they couldn't be further from the truth. I go into Tarek's office, and he's there. He's like, "Hello," gentle spoken, and he was like, "Can I help you?" I was like, I don't know. I think so.
Can you?
Can you? And I noticed a football trophy on his desk, and I said, "Oh, you play football?" I was thinking, what can I identify with? And he went, "Yeah. I was a professional here." I was like, wow. Like, I early part of my life, I played at a very good level. He was like, I was the first player to be sold for $1 million dirhams from Al Wassa to Al Jazeera Club. Played for the national team. And then we just hit off. We hit it off. And we're friends now.
Till this day.
So I play football 2 times a week.
With
here.
him?
He lives in Abu Dhabi. Sometimes he plays, sometimes he doesn't. But he introduced me to all his friends, right?
Yeah.
So 2 times a week, I play. I'm the only European.
Oh, wow.
And I've played with him 15 years.
Wow, amazing.
And they are...
Yeah, I see sometimes you post it on Instagram.
Yeah, and they are, honestly, some of the just the best people. Yeah. Like, the best people.
Yeah.
And they all have you know, superb jobs, but everyone is down to earth. Everyone, and you talk about brotherhood. I see these guys, and I've been lucky enough to grow old with them in many ways, and they still play football together. Prayer time comes, everyone stops, and they in the middle of the pitch they pray together. And like I said, I'm not religious, but when you talk about spiritual things and just I can't. I just watch sometimes in awe, like the brotherhood of them praying, and they're all in this together, and it's hard to explain. It's like, but when you're there, you're in it, and I end up just walking around the pitch on my own, like almost having my own little prayer, but just for being blessed, for where I am, for the people I spend my time with. Like, I could never have dreamt the life I have. Like, I never could. And Tarek, and the reason why I come back, because Tarek was he put that in motion for me, right? And he built that company. Because he got on so well, he helped me so much on my career here, getting business. And then I built it. I then sold it because I had enough. I sold for no money. I went back, worked in London, worked for a big investment company, and then left, sold my house, split up with my daughter's mum. And it was challenging, but it was the right decision, absolutely the right decision. And then I'm early. I'm like, obviously my father passed away. I've got my daughter. I'm early 30s, and I'm skint. I've got no money, and I can't think why. But it's only now I realise why I haven't got money, because I was earning good money, but I was spending it. Because big thing with ADHD, you chase dopamine. So I'd be going, and I was spent a lot of time on my own, travelling the world on an aeroplane. I'd land in Singapore. I was in Libya not long before Gaddafi. I was in Ghana. I've been to Nigeria. I've been to some wicked places and some,
crazy, sketchy places.
On my own as well, not knowing anyone. And I just spent money all the time. I was spending it because I was trying to get this dopamine fix all the time. So I come work for, and then I met Bin Jabba through my business. Moved, we went our own ways because my daughter's mum wanted to come back to London, didn't. And I was flying back every other weekend. So I'd finish work on a Thursday, because we used to do Sunday to Thursday back then. Fly from Abu Dhabi to Heathrow Thursday night, land Friday morning, get a taxi to my house, which is near Gatwick Airport, spend all day with my daughter, go to bed, wake up Saturday as early as I could, spend half the day with her, then get back in a taxi to Heathrow, fly back overnight to land Sunday to go back to work. And I did that. And then made the move back because it just wasn't working. My daughter was the most important. Went to work back in the city, but my own goal was to set up my own business again. Sold my house because I was in debt, and if I didn't sell it, they were going to take it, which was stressful, really stressful. When I think about trauma and times, I think that, I'd gone my own way. I've got this house on a mortgage I couldn't afford. Debt piled up to the eyeballs. Like, I was earning 4,000 net a month, which is a good salary in the UK. My outgoings were, I was using payday loans. I was using anything, try and keep my head above the water. And I couldn't do it. And moments, it's about moments. I had to go and get my daughter. I had her every weekend. Like, that was non-negotiable for me. It was never every other weekend. It was every Wednesday and every weekend.
Very good.
And I had a smart car.
So you were a very present father. So you still are.
I am, absolutely. And I would never be anything but that. And I had a smart car, and it had no fuel, and I had no money. And I was due to go and get my daughter Saturday morning. And I thought, what am I going to do? I went to, looked at my bank, and I was minus money. And I'd used all my payday loans. I thought, I must have some money down the back of the sofa. I was desperate. And I found an old mobile phone, an old iPhone. I took it to the shop. I got 40 quid for it. They wouldn't even give me 50 because I didn't have the charger.
Oh, my God.
I went and put 20 quid fuel in my car. Went and picked my daughter, took her to Eastbourne, down to the beach there, Pebbled Beach. Just had some money for some chips. We shared chips. We threw rocks into the ocean. I got her next morning, dropped her back, and I sat in my house and I cried for an hour. Because I'd failed as I'd failed as a father, as a leader, as a human. I'd failed. But I also know I had to pick myself up because no one cares. And what I mean by that is life doesn't care. It doesn't. You can sit there.
It's like that quote that I always say, and I heard it, I think, from a movie one time. It's like that the cavalry ain't coming. That's it. Ain't coming. You're on your own, and you should really man up and just understand that this is the reality. No
one's coming to save you.
No.
I had a good job in the city still, right? I was earning good money. And at the time, I was obviously single, I was dating, and was on Instagram, and I saw this woman on there, and I was like, wow, liked a few of her pictures. She liked a few of mine. And I was getting on a train into London, and a cousin of mine, Hannah, I said to her, see this woman? She went, I went, I'm going to marry her. She went, you've never met her? I went, I know, I just know. She's my wife today.
No way.
Promise you.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, how crazy that. At that point, we'd never even met.
Yeah.
And I just, and she
You
always
just knew.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? We talk about it, like,
Yeah.
and I laugh about it, right? And
Yeah.
we, like I said to her, and every now and again she reminds me. So we would, we were talking, flirting a little bit, and I was like, "Come to London, I'll take you down the Thames, on a helicopter." It was absolute rubbish. I don't know where this was coming from.
Yeah.
Because I was skint, like I had no money.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And anyway, we met. We'd been talking, FaceTimed a bit. We met in London for dinner, and she was 19, and I was early 30s. So a bit of an 13 years age gap. And she was working at Claire's while she was doing a law degree, open uni. Again, she's gonna hate me saying this, but she is the smartest woman I've had, amazingly smart.
I'm sure.
And so she gets a train from Nottingham, where she's from. We meet in London. We go Covent Garden. We're having some drinks, and I'm like, I'm skint, right? I scraped together. I think I borrowed some money off my mum to take her on a date. Like, I had 50, 60 quid, tops, maybe.
Yeah.
And like every drink, I'm thinking. And then what I noticed, she was like, no, I'll get this. Let me get this one. Bit odd. Man in me. I'm like, no, but I didn't really have much of this.
Yeah.
Anyway, we get on really well. And she goes back up to Nottingham. And when she left, I just felt, I don't know, I felt like, I really like her. I couldn't put my finger on it. I felt love for the first time in a female. I felt like I'd maybe loved before, but not at the same level. And anyway, we dated 3 months. She'd come down after work on a Saturday. We'd go out for dinner.
Yeah.
I was trying to get on top of things. And one Sunday morning, my doorbell goes at 5 a.m. And I'm like, debt collectors.
Oh my God.
Right? I owe money. I'm about $3,000. And they're like, we're going to take your car. And I'm like, but I need it. And they were like, we don't care. Like, we're going to come and take your TV. And she was like, babe, who's that? I was like, debt collector, I owe money. She went, how much do you owe? I said, $3,000. She was like, right. She come down and started talking to him. She went, can you give me 24 hours? And she went to a bank, took a loan out, paid my debt off.
Amazing.
How mental is that?
Yeah, for a girl that just barely know you, like for that barely met you.
We're still courting, dating, whatever you want to call it, at that time, right? And then we carried on, and then a few times she left, like to go back, and I was like, I want this woman in my life. Like, I want her in my life. And I sent her a message, went, why don't you move in? Crazy, right? We've been 3-4 months dating.
Yeah.
She went,
and she's still very young. Like, I mean,
she's
what,
19, 20, yeah. And she went, I will. And I was like, this is nuts. And she called her mum, was like, I'm going to move in. She was like, you sure? She was like, yeah. And her mum backed it.
No way.
Backed it.
It's like it's almost meant to be.
Weird, right? And she
right,
went, you know
because she could have easily said, no, who's this broke kid that like has no future?
No, and she, her mum went, if it doesn't work out, you can always come back. Nothing ventured, nothing. And I thought, wow. And she moved in. She moved her job from Claire's Accessories from Nottingham to Tunbridge Wells, which was near, and she'd get the bus because she was learning, she just started to learn to drive. And I never forget it. And I sold the house and I cleared all my debt. And I knew I wanted something else in terms of my life. I didn't know what it was. We moved, I sold the house, paid the debt, went into a rental property, and for 6 months, I did nothing. I almost shut down. I know it's weird to look back. And I think I needed it. I had almost like a mental block for 6 months. I was watching Entourage, the series, till 3 a.m. in the morning. I was eating Dominoes, I was getting fat, I wasn't looking after myself. It was bizarre. And then one day I was like, I shouldn't do this. So I set up another recruitment company. I'd left London at this point, I'd had enough. Set up a recruitment company called Rivox.
Now we're talking at which year approximately?
So we're talking, this is 2015, 16.
Okay.
So I set Rivox up, and I'm trying to grow it, but I've got non-competes because I just left my industry. So I was like, right, I do construction. Loads of my friends own construction companies. I want to do that. A friend of mine who grew up with, he had a fairly, successful roofing company. He was like, mate, I need roofers. I was like, no, I don't really know much about it, but I'm normally used to real technical recruitment. Pretty sure I can do a roofer. So I started supplying him roofers after roofers, and we was building it. I was making like £1,000 a day. Like, I was doing well. My life started to change. I was going on nice holidays, like nice cars, was doing nice fit, I was buying perfumes, all this sorts of stuff, right?
And this is at the time where your current wife is already with you, like she's your partner at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're living together. She's doing her thing. She's doing her open uni. You know, and it was at that time.
It's amazing that she was studying, living with you, and working full time.
Like,
Like superwoman, huh?
Honestly,
superwoman.
It's I don't know how she does it.
Yeah.
And honestly, some of the stuff I'll come on to is even to this day now. I look at her sometimes and think,
Yeah.
okay, how do you do it?
Yeah.
Like, I'm in awe. Honestly,
Yeah.
I really am. So we're living together. We're doing this. She's getting a bus to work, and then like she's learning to drive. She's doing her open law, and I was like bumming about. Right, I've now set up my company, and it's early doors, but I'm churning through my money, right? Because I'm not working, so I'm churning. And I'm thinking, shit, right, starting to get a bit close again now. And anyway, so I start supplying my friend. I get invoice financing in from Lloyd's. Somehow they've helped me out because I'm out of debt now from my previous debt. And I'm building it, and my friend's got this company.
You were quite in debt at that time, huh?
Before I sold my house, I was £72,000 in debt.
That's a lot of money at that age. I mean,
and
it's a lot of money now. Imagine then.
And also, when my father died, the will and everything was still in my name.
Yeah.
So I would have the house, his car. Like, he didn't have loads, you know, but he had a little bit. But when he died, my brother was 2, one was 3, one was 4, and my stepmom was lost. Still lost to this day. And so I signed it all over. About 300 grand. I signed it. I need the boys to have a house. They need to be fed. They need to be looked after. My father had also become a Freemason 9 months just before he got diagnosed. Terminal,
Really?
Right? Yeah. But he didn't really get to be part of it. But they have a charity. And honestly, people have different viewpoints on them, but I can only go from my experience with them. And I actually ended up becoming one, but didn't. I did become one, but I just couldn't go, so I ended up leaving. But what they do some amazing things, and they paid the mortgage. They gave the kids food. They gave her like an allowance every month. He was only in nine months. They looked after those kids.
Wow.
Offered to put them in private school. Like an amazing fraternity. And actually, they're the second largest bigger to charities in the UK, but no one really knows about it. But yeah, amazing group.
And your brothers probably would have been on the streets by now if it wasn't for that.
Yeah, it was.
And I think you still have a pretty good relationship with them till this day.
Yeah, no, I do. It's my relationship with my stepmom is strained because I don't. She's gone down the
a dark
route.
Yeah.
Self-loathing.
As you said, she was lost, and you can't really be too hard on people that are lost.
And do you know what? I wouldn't. Even now, she's never met my son. Never met him. And even now, I still send her messages just to go, you are in my thoughts. She never replies. And that's okay. I don't need her to reply. I just need her to know. And also know that if they ever need anything, I'm still there. It doesn't matter. It's a bit like my mum. Like, I knew she was there if I needed to. And like I said, I set this business up. We're doing well. We've moved we lived in a little medieval village called Penshurst, which is beautiful, but it was a bit remote, to be fair. I quite liked it at that time. We had big
So
plates.
who lived there at that time?
Me and my now wife, Chloe. It was closer to her work to get the bus. For me, it didn't really matter because I was driving. And the business started to take off. We got a little office. I hired 1 or 2 people in. It started to flourish. We were doing well. And then, again, we were supplying personnel to my friend. He went through a real messy divorce. Unfortunately, went down a dark path. Come out of it the other side now. And I hold no bitterness to him. I did. I really did. And it was probably the first time I even realised that now. But and his company folded. And it took mine with him. And so I went from clearing debt to now being in £178,000 worth. Now, for some reason, I took insurance. I don't know why I wouldn't normally take it. On the insurance company paid out 120,000 of that debt, Lloyd's invoice commercial, but I still owed the rest because I'd personal guaranteed it. But I didn't have anything. I didn't have any assets because I'd sold them.
And you signed off everything that your dad left.
Yeah, exactly. So I had nothing, which actually, ironic enough, was a blessing. But at the time, I'd also found out my mum was terminal, so she was dying, right? And she had some money, not loads, but my fear was this. My fear was that she would pass away, which I knew was going to happen, and then the bank would take the money that she'd left for me to build a future. And that weighed heavy on my mind, and really, really heavy on my mind, more than probably I'd let anyone even know. And do you know what? Lloyd's commercial finance, guy called Paul Fisher, he let me pay £20 a month off that debt.
No way.
£20 a month off that debt, right?
Amazing.
And when the company went under, I was minus 5 grand, 30 quid to 30 quid.
Wow.
That's all I had.
Now we're talking which year?
So we're talking to March 2018.
So 3 years later, almost approximately.
Yeah. 2.5, 3 years later.
So you're paying off a debt that's like what, almost 70, 60K, 20 pounds a month.
Do you know,
what a favor this guy did for you, huh?
do you know when I paid it off?
What a proper guy.
Do you know when I paid it off?
When?
2 weeks ago.
Oh my God.
I sent them the last 4 grand I owed them.
Oh my God. That is
About that.
amazing. Shout out to Paul. What was it?
Paul Fisher,
Paul
Lloyd's
Fisher.
commercial.
Shout out to Paul.
Mate, he probably doesn't, he's a real humble guy, he's a lovely man. Just imagine he's just a great family guy, right? Salt of the earth type guy. He will probably never realise the effect he had on me. Amazing. Yeah, it was dark. It was really fucking, it was so hard, right? And I had staff at this point, and I was like, what am I going to do? So I'm now 2018, so I'm not young anymore, right? So it's like 5-6 years ago. So I would have been what, like mid to late 30s, and I should be. In my head, I should be a millionaire by now. I should be retired, sitting on a beach in Saint Tropez.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm not. I'm skidding. I've got no money. Where do I go? What do I do? My mum's terminally ill. What do I do? I have overheads, right? So my overheads are 3-4 grand a month. I never missed a maintenance payment. It's one thing I'm very proud about. Never missed a maintenance payment to my daughter's mum. Never. And she did help me with it because I had to lower it, and she was very understandable. And again, you know, little things you appreciate. And yeah, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, but I knew my non-compete was up now. So I was like, right, I want to go back to what I know. I go back to energy.
Back to the thing that you do best.
Yeah. And so I set up Hydro Energy Group. It's actually called Hydro Global Energy to start with, and I just didn't like the name, so I ended up changing it.
So you didn't like the name, you changed it.
So I didn't like, changed it, but I was ducking and diving, wheeling and dealing. I was like selling watches on the side because I'd learned watches from.
And this is only a few years ago. Like,
well,
it's insane.
5-6 years ago, right?
Insane.
So I was, you know, ducking and diving, wheeling and dealing, just trying to do whatever. And you know, one thing I'm so proud of, I've never done anything illegal.
Yeah.
Never. I've never sold anything that was illegal. Yeah. Never. I've always played by the rules.
Yeah, even though you had every reason to. Because the system had failed you.
Yeah, no, I'd failed. I'd failed myself. I would never blame the system. I'd failed myself because I was lost, and I didn't realise I was lost. And you can only find yourself when you realise you're lost in the first place. Yeah. And I found my, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, juju. And defining moments. I was in the shower, and I broke down. For the first time in a long time, I broke down and I cried. And I slapped myself a few times. And I started laughing, almost like the Joker, like uncontrollable. Yeah. And I went, right, now we're going to see what you're made of. Now is your time. And then I just was hell-bent. So I did a deal with...
Did Chloe know what's going on?
Yeah. Like
She knew everything?
Yeah, always.
Okay.
And it's one of those things, right, is I've always been transparent with her, right? Always. And she helped me so much. Her income, like, which was not much, helped us. And she could never do enough, and she supported me. Even when I had a millisecond of doubt, she'd be like, don't doubt yourself. Don't do that. That's not who you are. Be true to who you are. Don't let that creep in.
Yeah, it's amazing. What's even more amazing is how such a young woman can have a wisdom. How such a young woman can have wisdom of someone that is almost double her age.
Yeah. Like beyond.
I mean, she must have been raised by great parents, and I'm sure you...
Unbelievable. They were literally here last week, and, you know, they get here and they're like, oh, Ben, thanks for letting us stay, you know, don't want to intrude. I'm like, I love having you here.
Yeah.
You
have no idea how much you guys indirectly contributed to where I am
completely. And do you know what? They're just great humans. They're just great human beings, and that's so important.
Like a perfect, let's say, example of a good old traditional, maybe hardworking British family, like with a really good moral compass.
Yeah. So, you know, not without their problems in the past, but
obviously,
because everyone does, right? But to see the way they are, to see like her mum as well, to see she would do anything for anyone, any time. And remarkable, again, you'll make me say, remarkable woman. Again, and I see where my wife, some of her real strong qualities
Obviously,
from.
the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
A 1,000%. So, yeah, you know, I've set up hydro. I've got a friend of mine who's in construction, and they needed muck away. They needed lorries to take it away. I then knew someone in that sector who did that. I then brokered a deal, made a few quid off each load to then help fund my company. I then had a client from Sweden who was setting up here in the region, but was about to pay something ridiculous to a law firm here to do it. I was like, mate, you don't need to do that. This is how you do it. I'll guide you. I don't want anything for it either. I just felt like I was in a place where I was against it, no doubt about it. But I just felt if I put enough goodness out there,
it's going to come back to you.
The world will come back to me. And I talk about karma. I talk about karma a lot. And I put a lot of bad karma out in this universe, right? And I also feel that I've probably paid my dues for that, for the karma that's come back to me at some point. And I'm okay with that because now my frequency is very different. So I said, I'll help you. And he went, well, I tell you what, I'll payroll your company for 3 months, but you've only got 3 months to get it up and running. So, you know, I'm like a swan on the surface, but I am pedaling underneath it. I am calling everyone and anyone I know to try and help me. There's another guy called Reese McAllister who is an unbelievable guy.
You actually made a post on LinkedIn that I saw. I actually went through most of your content, and you made a special appreciation, particularly.
He made me say, but he's had a real profound, my working career. He was one of my first clients in Singapore. Helped me out, no end. Another guy, Malcolm Rennie, lives here, works for a company called Mermaid. He never buys from me, by the way, never, but what a guy. Grumpy Scotsman, and I love him dearly. I honestly love him dearly. He loves hammering me, but I just, there's people. I've met so many unique people along this journey, right? And they've all left part of their personalities with me, and I'd like to think I've left part of who I am with them. They'll probably say for the wrong reasons, but yeah. So I reached out to everyone and anyone in my network to just really help. And I managed to get some clients on board. For instance, lovely lady at NC called Esther helped me out loads. I was learning about hydrographic survey, started supplying people into their company called GeoXYZ that really helped there. And I was doing some stuff with MPCC here, some bits and pieces. But I had no idea around like how I was going to finance this, right? Because I couldn't get invoice financing because I'm in a state of default, right? So somehow I did. Again, I don't know how I did, but I was paying well over the odds. But I reached out to a guy who was my old mentor when I moved back from the Middle East, a guy called Tristan Ramos. The sharpest man I've ever been in a room with. Smart, street kid, will be a billionaire. Some people love him, some people hate me, he's Marmite, no doubt. But I reached out and said, mate, I've got this little business. I don't know what to grow, how to grow it. I need some finance, I need some investment. And he was like, Ben, come and see me. Come and see me in London. I love the way you are. You know, he still probably saw a bit of me in himself, I think. Come in, he was like, mate, you know I only buy companies who invest in companies that have got 2 million EBIT. I'm about £2, right? I mean, £2 on a good day. He went, but I want you to meet this guy. He's dissecting his business. You've got to meet him. He was like, he's like, I went, what, unhinged? He went, well, yeah, slightly. A guy called Nick Gordon, who is my business partner this day. Nick and I meet, we talk, goes on, you know, we flirt back and forth, 8 months. He finally agrees to come on board, and we just grow the business. You know, he was more of a silent investor to start with.
The rest is history.
The rest is, you know, I look at the business now. We'll do £22 million this year. We've got offices in London, Dubai, Plymouth. You know.
Amazing.
Yeah, we've got a team of 20 now across the world. But you know, someone said to me recently, they were like, "Why do you think you've been successful?" And I don't think I am. That's one. And two, it's because I'm an idiot. And they were like, "What do you mean?" I went, "Because I just don't give up. I don't know any different, do I?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I was like, "But the real reason why is because of the people I have in my business. Every one of them are so unique and so special.
Yeah.
So much in their own way. They add so much value and it's not even my business. It's not my business. It's our business. It's a collective. Like I wouldn't be where I am without them. Like they're unbelievable people. They really are. All with their own challenges.
Yeah. We all do have our own challenges.
But when we come together, like it's so diverse. I've got all different nationalities. We've got different languages. Like on average, we have 160 to 200 people offshore at any one time. And it ranges, we have like 24 nationalities in 12 different oceans.
Amazing. And actually, I'm going to get into the 12 principles. Actually, let's talk about it now. And you have the 12 principles of Hydro.
We do.
Which one's your favorite, though?
Number one. Number one.
Which is?
No arseholes.
No arseholes.
And let me tell you something.
This is my favorite, actually, because it's amazing. I mean,
I will live and die by that statement. And don't get me wrong, we can all be difficult. And I'm sure I am probably the most difficult person in the business. And my number two, a guy called Chris Girdleston, we are yin and yang. Like, I am the visionary, that one who goes off on 1,000 different tangents and different things. And he is like nuts and bolts. He puts it together.
Very systematic.
Yeah, it's systematic and unbelievable.
You need that balance.
I have to have it.
If your partner was someone like you, or if your number two was someone like you, I don't think it would be
it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. But Chris is an amazing guy. Like I couldn't speak highly of him enough. And he is a great manager. He manages people very well. And I am a terrible manager. But what I am good at is understanding strategy, vision, how we align things.
The very high level.
Overview.
But
but that's because
which is equally important.
Because that's how my brain works. But without him, I wouldn't be able to put that in play. If that makes sense.
Of course.
I mean, we've got to work on his dress sense. He does look a bit like a geography teacher, but he is phenomenal guy. And I've got a lady called Tara Matthews. Like she works from home. A little boy, I love him. Now we talk about people, young. I look at his energy, and he has autism. I'm not sure to what level, but mate, what a boy! Like, unbelievable. And the way she manages him and the work-life balance, and she's like one of my top billers in the business.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Even though she's working from home.
Yeah, we have more women in the business than men.
Oh, amazing.
And every one of them are leaders in their own right. Very different, personalities very different, but the way they interact with others and the way they are, phenomenal. Like the business would never be where it is without
their collective efforts.
Completely. And I could never sit here and go, it's me. I would never be where I am without them. Like it, and I'd like to think I've had an impact in their lives as well. But I think that's what makes the business so unique. We had a turning point. We was in London. We had a little office in London. I looked across the desk and it was 4 lads, and it was like lads. It was like a boys' club. And I thought, this is not what I want. It's one-dimensional. We're multi-dimensional. So I changed it, and we flourished. We absolutely
because it only makes sense that your business will grow and become better when you have contribution from different genders, different cultures,
everything. Absolutely. We've got one of our ladies, Nadia, who's off taking some time off maternity at the moment. Grew up in a little village in Latvia on the Russian border. Had nothing. And when she joined, I was like, "What's your Y factor?" She's like, "What do you mean?" But I don't really know. It's important. And I worked with her to understand what she wanted. And she was like, "I'd love to buy a House." My mum never told me, I'd never be able to afford a house. I wouldn't be able to do this, and I wouldn't be able to do that. And I said, "Well, you'll buy a house. If you give me everything, you'll buy a house." And I've kept it on my phone. I've got a message from her to say, "I've just bought my first house." But it wasn't amazing. A normal house. It was a 4-bedroom house. And she got married. She's got a beautiful little one called Luna. It's changed her life. The business has changed her life. That is the whole reason why I wanted it. Because it changed mine, but I wanted it to change everyone else's. I want everyone else to come on this journey and create wealth. I'm not in this for me. I don't want to generate wealth. I want everyone in 10 years' time when we look back and go, "Do you remember that business? I was part of it." That for me is the most powerful thing
I think you're really big on legacy create because
Yeah.
I feel like you also feed off a lot of the legacy that your father left.
Yeah.
So you want to continue something similar in your own right, in your own way, with your own, let's say, signature
Yeah,
on it.
absolutely. And you know, when I talk about amazing people. Obviously, I spoke about my wife, and she is the absolute driving force as well
Yeah.
as to why
100%.
where I am. And you know, I knew, as I said, I knew I was going to marry her. Right, I just knew it. But when I look at her resilience, her work ethic, you know, she is a top lawyer at a huge, big American tech, one of the, you know, the highest performing people in their division, right, in their business. She's 29.
Amazing.
And she did her master's degree, her I forget what it's called now, to be a lawyer.
LLM.
Like, I forget what it's called now.
It's all right. It's okay.
It'll come to me. But she did that whilst pregnant and whilst on maternity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got a picture somewhere, and I wish I'd had it, but for her with my little newborn son.
And the books on the.
And the books and like a laptop. And you look at inspirational people.
Yeah, that image is engraved in your mind forever.
Yeah. And I'm lucky enough, I wake up every morning next to what I find
Yeah.
the most inspirational person around.
Because I remember there was a quote in a book. I don't know if you read it, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, but I mentioned this book a lot because it's really very, it covers the essence of business, life, masculinity,
Yeah.
etc. But anyway, the most important thing that he said is because he wrote this book over the span of 25 years and he interviewed the most successful,
Yeah.
richest people in the US. And when it came to relationships with women and partners in particular, all billionaires and all successful men that he interviewed over the span of 25 years said unanimously, they said all together that having the right woman in your life is the single most important factor as to where you're gonna go and how successful you're gonna be. So it's without a doubt that having the right woman, a woman like Chloe, is almost guaranteed that she'll just gonna, like you said, give you the driving force that you need to just keep going.
Absolutely. Like earlier on, I said about it's like an internal project, which I call breaking the chain. Taking my family name, my surname is synonymous in certain circles with being a certain way, living a certain, you know, being aggressive, whatever you want to call it. Right? It's had its element of reputation, but I look at what Chloe and I have created, and I look at where we're going to go. And listen, that excites me more than anything. Like I love Hydro, I love the business, and I love the other bits and bits I do. But when I look at her, I look and go, none of this would have been possible really without her. Like she kept me grounded. When I was getting ahead of myself, she took me back down. She was like, remember who you are, remember where you come from. It's really, really, really important you do that. And I mentioned before, I've got like a life coach, a lady called Tara Lynn, again, an amazing.
I think you mentioned her in one of our comments.
Phenomenal woman. She said to me, Ben, who you were to get here isn't necessarily who you need to be moving forward. You've taken the best bad situations to propel you where you are, but with your new skill sets, you can be in it. You could actually be whatever you need, whatever you want to be, because you've got the ingredients now, because you've put in the hard work, right? You haven't fractured under it, and it would have been easy to. And but like like moving to Dubai, right?
Well, why did you make that move? I'm actually very curious.
Do you know what? It's sort of a number of reasons. One, I love the UK. I love it.
And you're a very proud British man.
I am. You know,
and I love that. It's nice to see someone that's very proud of where they come from.
I love our royal family. You know, God bless her, the Queen. I felt that. Actually, I did shed a tear, because it was just everything that was great. The UK, and I love it, but I feel we've just been sold out time and time again by politicians. You know, we have Labour now, it's red, and everyone's going, well, you know, Labour are no good, and I look and go, I don't think any of them are. Blue, red, left, right, central. I think they're all in it for their own agendas, and that pains me, because it's a once great nation. You know, that the son never set on the British Empire. And we've created so much infrastructure around the world. Then look, and we've just given it all away, and it's sad. And now, I love this. I talk about the passion I have for the UK. It's probably a little bit more here, UAE. My son's recently started school.
I think because you resonate with a similar style.
Yeah, because it's monarchy led. You know, you have a monarchy. The king of Dubai, I've met him once, shook his hand at IDEX, and again, probably didn't wash it for about a week. It just an amazing experience. And I look at what they've created, a utopia. The crime is near enough low, like minimal. My wife, my children are safe. But a lot of people don't even lock their doors here. It's they've created an environment, competitive one, but you have to bring something. You have to bring something to this region.
It's not a market for losers, for sure.
If you're a loser,
there's no room for a loser here.
This is the wrong place, right? It's and I look at its history, and I look at the entrepreneurs that have led this and lead this great nation. We're sitting here in Nira, which is owned by Khalifa himself. You know, the guy himself, and Khalifa Habtoor and his son Mohammed and the other guy. Like, they were such a huge part of this great nation. That they bring tourism here, and everywhere you look, there is just inspiration. Yeah. So when I feel about inspiration, I walk down the street here and I'm inspired. And I tell you what, also, I'm inspired by all these great leaders and great characters, but I'm also inspired by the workers, the taxi drivers, the cleaners, because without them, the infrastructure would fall, right? They're as important as everyone else. And the construction workers, I know, the Dubai goes, well, they don't get much money, but they come here to create opportunity for themselves, and they send all that money back home. Yeah. That creates their kids to go to school, and it might not be a lot of money to some of us, right?
But it's a lot for them.
But it's huge for them, and there isn't the opportunities in some of these developing countries. And I said, I took my son to school. One of his first days, I walk around a corner and the music starts, and everyone stops, and I'm like, oh, what's happening? It's like it wasn't musical chairs, so I didn't know quite what was going on. And look, I see a flag, and then it's the national anthem, and everyone stopped. You can hear a pin drop, and everyone was watching the UAE flag go up that pole. Yeah. And I was mesmerised. And I thought, in the UK, that's like an act of terrorism now. Like, it might, God forbid, you're
You're nationalist.
You're a nationalist, because I want the country to be in the best version of it for the best people. Yeah. And, a lot of people talk about immigration. I'm all for immigration. You have to have it to grow an economy. But it has to be done right. Yeah. Has to be done right. You can't have people turning up, and I'm not going to get on this political soapbox, but you can't have people turn up with no identities. Yeah. Could you do that here?
No. We couldn't. You shouldn't be able to do that anywhere in the first place. It doesn't make sense.
And also it's a breach of maritime law without going inside that. Letting people actually leave on a dinghy that's maybe set for 12 and there's 30, 40 people. That's a risk. Yeah. But anyway, so when I look at the UK and I love it. But here, my family is safe. It's a thriving nation. And I also feel like it's only going to get better. And I see loads online where people go, oh, it's soulless, it's big buildings, it's this. And I go, I've got this saying, it's like, tell me you've never been to the UAE, tell me you've never been to the UAE, right? Yeah. Because people that say that have not got a clue. Yeah, exactly. Because this country is in heritage and culture. But listen, you have to go and find it. Right?
Exactly. Just the same way I had to go find my peace an hour and a half away from Dubai. I mean, it's just, if you're going to stay here, sit in the city, and the hustle and bustle, and you're going to complain of it. It's a city made for business, made for winners, made for people that are thriving. If you want your peace, if you want your culture, you can find it. You have to look for it.
Yeah. And I look at it and go, so I'm lucky enough to have a big network of friends here, local Emirati friends. And do you know what? They would help me if I needed it. And I tell you what, there's not many of them in the UK. I've got 5 friends that I could trust, right? And funny enough, out of those 5, 3 are looking to move here. So that probably tells you,
it's very sad what's happening in the UK and where it's at the moment.
UK, Europe. I just think it needs like almost like a hard reset. But 25,000 people a year are moving here from Europe. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, actually, the exact correct figure is 50,000 every quarter.
Is that what it is?
Every quarter.
Wow.
That's the number that I got from Dubai Statistics Center. So it's 200 to 250K a year.
Wow. Well, and not
I mean,
surprising.
that's because you can tell with the traffic. I mean, have you
Yeah.
been stuck in
It's why I live out. It's why I live out in Arabian Ranches.
yeah, exactly. I mean, have you tried the traffic in the morning or in the afternoon here at rush hour?
Oh,
It's insane.
I
You could be
do.
stuck for 1 kilometer in downtown for an hour. One
Yeah.
kilometer. I swear
Yeah.
to you, it happened to me once, and I was like, never again.
But the good thing about here, right? They listen. They'll build a road.
Yeah.
They'll build a relief road around it.
Yeah.
And that's I don't think I've
Very
ever.
reactive.
I don't think I've ever seen a pothole. Like
Yeah.
I don't think I've.
No.
I don't think I've ever seen one. I go
Let
back.
alone, I've never seen dirt on the floor.
I go back to the UK. There's potholes. There's dirt. I have to wear I wear a Casio G-Shock into London because someone will have my arm off for a Rolex. It's not even a nice per se,
Yeah.
but and that's a sign of the times.
Unfortunately. Now to sort of maybe with all of your journey and everything that you've been through so far, and if you really had to like give advice for a young rising entrepreneur, what would you say, what would your advice be for them, especially if they're at a young age where they could really, let's say, have the opportunity and have the time to change things around, because it gets harder as you grow older.
Absolutely.
Right.
I would say read. You don't have to be the best at school. You don't have to be that. I personally agree that, personally feel that a lot of schools are set up to make you institutionalized, to make you a great employee, but not an entrepreneur. Read. There's loads of good literature out there.
Yes.
And do you know what? In your community, have a look. Find someone, find an entrepreneur, and go to them and say, can I shadow you? Can I learn from you?
So find a mentor.
Find a mentor. And I tell you what, most people want to help. Especially entrepreneurs, because they're identified, because they were you once, right? And find something you're passionate about as well, right? Because you can monetize that. I know there's a lot of advice that goes, well, passionate people, they may do the job that they don't make loads of money from. I feel in the modern world, actually, that can become mildly soulless and very transactional. If you find passion for something, you can monetize.
Amazing. One group of people that I'm particularly very, let's say, sensitive towards, to put it in the right way, are people that come from underprivileged backgrounds.
Yeah.
Right. And we both know that because we've shared very similar stories. If someone comes with a background where all odds are against him, specifically let's talk about a man, because it's very different for a woman. We'll just focus on a man. What would your advice for him be? I mean, we spoke about entrepreneurs, but someone that's really, come from a lot of adversity, frustration, letdowns, etc. How would you advise a young man to sort of make it in this hard, difficult world?
My first word would be, you faced adversity, because most of this world hasn't. So that's an advantage. Stop looking at it as a negative. Look at it as an advantage. The world hasn't given you anything. Good. The world won't give you anything. What does that mean? You have to go and take it. No days off. You have to get a plan. Get a plan together. What does that look like? What does good look like? Work back. What if you want this in your life? What is it? Is it financial freedom? Is it to travel the world? Whatever it is, get a piece of paper, get a whiteboard, whatever it is, download it, get it on there, work back, because from there you can work out what your first steps look like. A lot of people go on a journey, they make the first step, and they don't have an end goal. They just cruise. How many people have you met through life who go for aimlessly, paycheck to paycheck?
They're stuck in that cycle.
Yeah, but then how many people have you met who are, that's my goal? I might detour, and it's okay to pivot, right? Absolutely okay to pivot. Ultimately, that's what I need. So like I said, mine was breaking the chain. Now, what that looked like at the time, I didn't know. Could have been selling cars, watches. I just knew it'd be sales, something, because I haven't got any other skills to do that. No one can read my handwriting. So I definitely wasn't going to be, teaching people to write, that's for sure. So you look at the cards you've been dealt, right? And it's okay to be dealt cards. Use them, look at them. Don't look at them with a negative mindset. Everything in this world has happened with a positive mindset. Even things that maybe weren't great in this world have happened because someone's got a goal to try and achieve something. Get it done, get it dialed in, get a plan in. Doesn't matter, your age is irrelevant in that as well, right? You're seeing more and more younger entrepreneurs come through the ranks now. younger and younger millionaires. Why is that? It's because some people don't identify with your traditional school methods and think, actually, with the rise of the internet, you know, social media, you know, e-shop, TikTok shops, Instagram, whatever it may be, you can actually make money. And if you're in a job, and I was having this chat yesterday with my wife's friend, you're a job that you don't really like and you don't really see any value in it, it's very difficult because you need that money, right, to pay your bills. Find your side hustle. Find what you're passionate about and find how you can monetize that. And then get to a point where this overtakes that and you move.
We spoke about all the people that have such great influence in your life, and particularly your great wife and your amazing son and your daughter also. But I want you to look into that camera, and I'm sure your father is watching down on you, and I want you to say something to him now that is really from the heart that he probably maybe never heard, or maybe that you'd like to say right now.
Ooh, I'd say two things. I forgive you for the parts you should have been better at, and I thank you for giving me the skills to be able to get me to where I am today.
Amazing.
Appreciate it, brother.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Likewise.